a bright light suddenly erupted. Shu-abe inwardly complained that it was so bright he could not open his eyes or even breathe properly. Shu-abe was born on January 7th and was 23 years old. He was single and had never had a girlfriend. His hometown was Gyuda in Saitama Prefecture, and he currently lived in Kaname Town. He had started his first job in the sales department of a web advertising company and would soon complete his first year. Yet one thought lingered in his mind: what was he supposed to be doing? At that moment, he recalled that he must have been admitted after being a complete dumbass. He had gotten drunk, fallen off a balcony, and broken his bones. He must have caused a lot of trouble for the company as well. He might even get fired. Slowly, Shu opened his eyes and found himself in an unfamiliar place. His eyes widened in shock when he realized that it was not a hospital room. He had no idea where he was or what had happened. When he tried moving his hand, some sticky substance prevented him from moving. He reacted in shock upon seeing that it covered his whole body. Furious, he pulled the sticky substance away from himself, wondering what these super weird black strings were and why they were so creepy. He also wondered why he was completely wrapped in them. Suddenly, however, he noticed that his hands could move and that his legs felt as good as new. More importantly, he realized that he was completely naked. Shu was completely puzzled as he wondered what was going on. From a distance, he saw a small crack. Without hesitation, he walked toward it and peeked through the hole, finding a pile of stones inside. Beneath it was a small entrance. Without a second thought, he crawled inside and was surprised by what he saw. It was a metro. Shu realized that it was huge and wondered how old the subway was. More importantly, he had no idea where the hell he was. He groaned in frustration, admitting to himself that the situation was beyond his understanding. He wished someone would help him, but quickly warned himself that he might get arrested if he went in front of people completely naked. No one would help him like that, so he decided to get dressed before finding someone. Just then, he heard someone approaching. Shu panicked, realizing that his situation was really bad. He could not get in front of people like this at all. When he turned around, however, he saw a massive beast ready to devour him. Shu stood frozen as he wondered how there could be a wolf right there in Tokyo. That was impossible. He questioned whether this was a dream or whether the creature was a robot or CGI, desperately wishing someone would wake him already. The wolf suddenly lunged at him. Shu fell to the ground and desperately tried to make the wolf go away, but before he could finish, the wolf had already bitten his arm and was chewing it hungrily. Blood sprayed into the air as Shu screamed in agony. Staring at the wolf, he began to tremble, inwardly cursing his fate and wondering if he was really going to die after everything that had already happened. He curled up defensively once again as the wolf lunged toward him. Inside his mind, he desperately pleaded not to die. Then nothing happened. Slowly, Shu opened his eyes. What he saw left him frozen in shock. A sword had emerged directly from the palm of his hand, piercing straight through the wolf's head and killing it instantly. Blood dripped from the blade as Shu pulled it free from the beast's skull. Completely exhausted, he collapsed onto the ground. Staring blankly at his hand, he remained certain that he had seen a sword come out of his palm. He wondered whether it had been a dream, but the dead wolf made it clear that it had not. Shu inwardly complained that he was so hungry he wanted to eat something right away. The instant the thought crossed his mind, his eyes unconsciously drifted toward the dead wolf. He quickly snapped himself out of it and reflected on what the hell had happened to him. He had never been such a strong person, yet this was reality. Having an empty stomach was hell, and even though he had killed the wolf, he had no way to prepare a meal for himself. There was no pond or source of fire nearby. His hands began to tremble. With no other choice, Shu decided that at this rate, he would even eat raw meat. All of a sudden, someone spoke, asking whether he was not going to squeak the sporangium. Hearing that, Shu stopped and looked around for the source of the voice. When he found no one else, the voice spoke once again, and Shu finally spotted it. The small squirrel greeted Shu, addressing him as Mr. Hunter and asking whether he could let him squeak it too. Shu did not respond immediately, as his brain was still trying to process everything he had just witnessed. Then, suddenly, he screamed at the top of his lungs after realizing that the squirrel was actually talking. In the next instant, the squirrel punched him straight in the face and angrily scolded him for speaking so loudly, warning that Shu would attract the other beasts as well. The squirrel continued rambling non-stop, complaining that hunters were always carving out metro beast sporangiums. He explained that he lived on the leftovers killed by those hunters. Afterward, he urged Shu to grow a pair and start extracting that ghost wolf already. The squirrel instructed Shu to begin by cutting open the belly. Although hesitant, Shu nervously stabbed into the wolf's corpse. The squirrel immediately urged him to keep going. Shu cursed under his breath, complaining that the skin was very thick. The squirrel explained that he did not need to open the ribs because the sporangium was in the lower belly. The moment Shu saw the wolf's inside spill out, disgust twisted across his face. Ignoring his reaction entirely, the squirrel informed him that there would be something ball-shaped deep inside. Shu reached into the corpse, grabbed one of the organs, and asked whether that was what the squirrel meant. Suddenly, however, a distant roar echoed through the area. The squirrel instantly panicked and began sprinting away, warning that some other beasts were coming in fast. Shu flinched in alarm. Without wasting another second, he hurried after the squirrel. As Shu returned to the area where he had originally been, he noted that, in the end, they had to come back here. The squirrel released a sigh and remarked that it was a good hideout because those big beasts would not be able to come through there. He then explained that the hole might have appeared because of the metro fluctuations yesterday. Shu echoed his confusion over the metro fluctuation. The squirrel explained that he had been flying down there a while ago. He then asked Shu what exactly this place was. The squirrel told him that he would explain later and that, for now, they should eat the sporangium. Hearing that, Shu stared at the organ in his hand, hesitating at the suggestion of eating it raw. He questioned whether it really was a body organ and found the idea of eating it like that deeply unpleasant. The squirrel furiously scolded him, warning that if Shu did not eat it quickly, it would rot, and angrily urged him to eat it already, calling him a dumbass. Shu wondered why the squirrel needed to curse at him so much. Having no other choice, Shu finally took a bite. He quickly swallowed it before collapsing to the ground in disgust. Suddenly, a shock surged through his entire body, causing him to freeze. Shu immediately demanded to know what had just happened. The squirrel explained that Shu had leveled up. Shu echoed his confusion over what leveling up meant. The squirrel explained that it meant the kinshur in his body had expanded. He then remarked that despite being a citizen of Itakuri, Shu was dumber than he was. Puzzled, Shu wondered about what the squirrel had said regarding his body's kinshur, growth, prohibition, kinshur, and mycelium. He admitted that he did not understand anything and that he was not even a hunter, but simply a regular employee. The squirrel repeated the word employee and dismissed it as a lame name. Shu quickly corrected the squirrel by identifying himself as Shu Abe. At that exact moment, another sudden shock surged through the squirrel's body. Immediately afterward, the squirrel celebrated excitedly upon realizing that he had also leveled up. Shu was surprised to discover that even squirrels had that leveled up system. The squirrel smugly revealed that he was not a squirrel at all, but a magical beast, the most famous carbuncle in the world. His frequent use of the word squeak in his sentences had merely made him seem like a squirrel. The squirrel then handed the organ back to Shu, explaining that he was already full and that Shu should eat the rest of it. Shu wondered whether squirrels were supposed to eat grass instead. The moment Shu swallowed the organ, another shock surged through his body. Seeing that, the squirrel remarked that Shu must be a really weak human to level up twice like that. Sighing heavily, Shu admitted that he was still weak. He had only woken up a while ago and had no clue where he was now. He then called out to the squirrel, who was busy licking his fingers. The squirrel turned toward him and pointed out that he had a name too. His name was Tomiko. Shu apologized to the squirrel and began calling him Tomiko before directly asking where they were and what year it was. Tomiko explained that they were currently at Atsuka Metro, approximately 50 levels deep underground. He did not know what year it was, but according to the Tokyo calendar, it should be around year 102. Confused, Shu wondered what Tomiko meant by the Tokyo calendar. Tomiko revealed that the metro had been flooded 102 years ago and that the previous kingdom had fallen into ruins. The place was now called New Tokyo. Tomiko added that his mama had whispered in his ear that it had become the kingdom of Itakuri's people. Hearing all of this, Shu froze in shock. At that moment, memories of when he had been in the hospital flooded into his mind. That day, there had been news reporting frequent collapses occurring in the metro, though nobody knew why. As a result, all the lines were currently out of order. When Shu's parents had visited him, they had told him that visiting had become really troublesome lately because the new Atsuka station had gone out of order. They had to walk the mountain trail from Atsuka station all the way there. His mother had also mentioned that there was such a huge queue at the station waiting to get on a train that they could not even enter the platform, and the situation was being called the metro flag on television. After that, his parents had bid him goodbye. Recalling that moment, Shu slowly realized that the metro flood, now that he thought about it, felt like something he had heard about before. That day had been extremely crowded everywhere, even inside the hospital. Then, all of a sudden, a nurse had barged in and announced that everyone needed to evacuate the area quickly. Shu had been confused about what was happening, but before he could finish questioning it, the ground had shaken violently. That day there had been a huge earthquake. The power supply had been cut, leaving everything pitch black. The building had trembled as if it were about to collapse at any moment, and then Shu had felt himself falling down along with his bed. Shu admitted to himself that he could remember only that much. If what Tomiko was saying was true, then the calamity must have happened together with the metro flooding event. Japan, or perhaps the entire world, must have been destroyed by it. New Tokyo must have been formed afterward. The current timeline was 100 years after that event. After piecing everything together, Shu muttered that it was impossible. Even if he had been asleep for around 100 years, he should have disappeared from this world. Instead, he was as healthy as he had been before the accident. Tomiko wondered whether that meant Abe Shu was a person from the previous world. Shu acknowledged that it appeared to be the case, though the idea sounded completely impossible. Tomiko wondered whether a normal person could even live that long. Shu dismissed the possibility, certain that humans could not live for 100 years at least. Shu then recalled that when he had awakened, he had been wrapped in the creepy thing. He asked what it was, and Tomiko identified it as mold. Shu froze as he considered the possibility that he had been inside mold. Tomiko suggested that it might have been Kinnu. Shu echoed his confusion over Kinnu. Tomiko released a heavy sigh, finding it tiresome to squeak out an explanation to someone who did not know anything at all. Shu immediately apologized. Without warning, however, he started rubbing Tomiko's belly. Furious, Tomiko shouted at Shu not to touch him and called him a dumbass. He threatened to bite Shu's finger off if he did not stop. However, only a few seconds later, Tomiko completely submitted. Shu asked once again what a Kinnu was. Tomiko explained that it was an ability that controlled their kinshur, also called a skill. The moment Shu stopped rubbing his belly, however, Tomiko immediately shouted for him not to stop and demanded more belly rubs. Without hesitation, Shu resumed rubbing his belly and then wondered whether the fungal filament was the mold or some kind of mushroom. While happily enjoying the belly rubs, Tomiko explained that all humans, including Shu, had that fungal filament inside them. That was why they could make use of Kinnu. Hearing that, Shu's face twisted with disgust as he wondered whether the fungus residing within him meant that there was a parasite inside his body. Tomiko then mentioned that Shu had killed the ghost wolf with Kinnu recently. Shocked, Shu stared at his palm and wondered whether that was the fungal ability. He recalled that, at the time, he had only wished to live. Right away, Shu tried to summon the sword again. Instantly, something appeared in his palm, like strands of hair, growing before slowly forming into a sword. Shu reacted in shock once again, unable to believe that he had really summoned a sword. Tomiko explained that it was his fungal ability, the fungal weapon hunters used. Without hesitation, Shu pulled the sword entirely from his palm. He stared at it in amazement, finding it to be an unpolished, thirsty blade that was light yet appeared extremely sharp, as if it were a real sword. He could not believe that this was his fungal. Tomiko confirmed that it was indeed Shu's fungal, describing it as his stiff and sharp thing. Shu wondered what that was supposed to mean. Tomiko explained that the hunters from people of Ikatori used their fungal abilities to obtain resources from the metro. They ate the sporangium, grew stronger, and killed even bigger ones. Shu's face filled with disgust as he wondered whether the sporangium of the metro beasts was essentially their reproductive organs or something similar. Tomiko suspected that they were descendants of the animals that had survived the metro pandemic that had happened 100 years ago. Shu echoed his words and pointed out that Tomiko had used yet another disturbing word. Shu then shifted to another topic, recalling that Tomiko had said this was Atsuka Metro. He wondered whether it was near Sugamo or Ikebukuro. Tomiko replied that he did not know because he had never gone to the surface. He had only learned about humans and their language from his mama. Tomiko added that his mama used to squeak monsters alongside hunters in the past. She had been very knowledgeable about things. Noticing the sadness in Tomiko's voice, Shu turned toward him in surprise. He then asked what it would take to return to the surface. Tomiko immediately answered that it was impossible. Hearing that, Shu froze. Tomiko pointed out that Shu was a weak person, nothing more than a small tick in the vast metro. If Shu remained careless in the metro, he would be squeaked by metro beasts such as the ghost wolf from earlier before he even knew it. After that, he would simply squeak into poop in no time. Shu replied that he did not want to be a poop. Tomiko added that Shu would have to climb a lot of stairs just to reach the surface. On top of that, there would be a lot of metro beasts squeaking in his way. Because of that, it was impossible for Shu. Disappointed, Shu asked about the possibility of another human coming down there. Tomiko immediately answered that there were none at all. He admitted that Shu was the first human he had squeaked at in his life, which was why he had been so excited to see Shu there. Tomiko added that it had been unexpected for him to squeak at a shiny face in a place like this. Shu sarcastically apologized for his shiny, attractive face. He then sighed in defeat, feeling that this was the worst of the worst. Tomiko suddenly added that, despite everything, Shu was still Shu Abe. He urged Shu to level up more and become capable of squeaking up against the metro beasts. Tomiko then advised Shu to eat more and more sporangium and become a fierce, squeaking hunter just like the one his mama had teamed up with. Hearing all of this, Shu was momentarily stunned. He admitted that he did not think he would be able to do it alone because he had not prepared for anything. He had no equipment and zero knowledge about anything in the current world. Tomiko leapt onto his shoulder and announced that he would help Shu. With the knowledge he had received from his mama, he would do his best to squeak alongside Shu in battles. Surprised, Shu expressed his gratitude but wanted to know why Tomiko was willing to help him. Tomiko excitedly revealed that he also wanted to squeak on the surface. He had spent his entire life squeaking down there in the metro and wanted to see everything above, including the sun and the towns built by humans. That was why he wanted to help Shu become stronger. He wanted them to squeak on the surface together. Shu understood and recognized that it was a win-win proposal. Then, out of nowhere, Tomiko questioned whether Shu had a male reproductive organ and revealed that she was female. Shu awkwardly confirmed that he did. With full determination, Shu stood up while thinking about the underground basement level 50 and the metro beasts running rampant. He only had the fungal sword as his weapon and a squirrel as his companion. He wondered what kind of adventure this even was, but he would not understand until he found out for himself. Tomiko then declared that it was time for them to start squeaking. Shu shook hands with Tomiko using his finger and expressed that he was looking forward to getting along with her. Tomiko returned the sentiment and promised to give it her all so they could both do their best. Judging from this outcome, the two of them would probably spend 5 years on this level. Shu asked Tomiko to treat him gently. Tomiko reassured him that everything would be all right. With Tomiko around him, it would be just like squeaking on a leafy boat. Shu replied that the boat was definitely going to sink. Tomiko told him not to be a meanie because she was being serious. Before they even knew it, they would be squeaking at the sun shining over New Tokyo. The next day, when Shu opened his eyes, he found himself in a familiar room. He realized that this was where he had been admitted. At that moment, a nurse announced that it was time for a meal. Relief washed over Shu as he realized that everything that had happened had only been a dream. A doctor asked Shu how he was feeling while checking on him. Shu questioned when he would be discharged, and the doctor answered that it would happen once Shu had leveled up sufficiently. Hearing that, Shu reacted in confusion. Just then, Tomiko cheerfully greeted him with a good morning and noted that it was bright outside. Shu immediately woke up, realizing that it had only been a dream. He sighed heavily, murmuring that the nightmare kept going even after he woke up. Tomiko pointed out that he was just waking up, yet her words instantly faltered when Shu rubbed her belly. Silently, Shu recalled that this place was the 50th level of Otsuka Metro. From what Tomiko had told him, it seemed to be a vast labyrinth spread deep beneath Tokyo. Yet it was so bright down there. Tomiko pointed something out and informed him that it was a firefly nest. The morning squeaks were bright there, while the nights were filled with blueness. Shu then wondered whether they had simply fallen asleep like that the previous day. He was really hungry and thirsty and wished they could find some water. Hearing that, Tomiko suggested going to the oasis. Shu echoed his confusion over the oasis, and Tomiko immediately guided him there. Along the way, Shu noticed the ghost wolf from the previous day. He observed that the beast already seemed to be turning into some sort of seed plot, even though no light was reaching it. Tomiko explained that this was simply how fungus grew. There was also a lot of fungus growing in the oasis. Hearing that, Shu decided to summon his sword just in case. At the same time, he recalled that the fungal ability and the blackish mold from earlier possessed healing properties as well as the ability to summon a sword. For now, he knew that he could use these two abilities, but he wondered whether there was more. Noticing his silence, Tomiko called his attention and urged him to keep moving. Right away, they continued their journey to the oasis. Tomiko continued giving him directions until they finally arrived. The moment Shu saw the oasis, he could not help but marvel at how incredible it was. He immediately snapped out of it and looked around in alarm. Tomiko reassured him that everything would be fine. With her fungal ability, she could pick up even the tiniest sounds. Tomiko proudly added that there were no beasts nearby, only some rats and other small animals. With that, Shu calmed down. Tomiko then excitedly pointed out that there was water. Without wasting a moment, the two of them headed there. Shu scooped up water with his palms and drank from them. The moment he tasted it, he was stunned by how delicious it was. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced, and he had never drunk such tasty water before. Next to him, Tomiko commented that making a noise was very rude. She then splashed water over herself before wiping herself with a dry leaf. Satisfied, she announced that she was done cleaning herself. With a curious look, Shu called out to her and wondered about the red jewel on her forehead. Tomiko simply explained that even her mama had one, so perhaps that was how squirrels were. Without warning, Shu patted the jewel. Tomiko immediately protested and told him not to touch it because it was very sensitive. Her anger instantly faded, however, and was replaced by pleasure. She even asked him to pat her more. Seeing that, Shu pointed out that she was pretty easy to understand. Moments later, Shu suggested that they should find some food. Seeing the unfamiliar plants around them, he admitted that he had never seen plants like these in his entire life. Tomiko immediately told him to leave it to her. She pointed to a nearby plant and informed him that the glossy plant was very bad news. She then identified the spindling plant and the bushy plant nearby as edible. Excitedly, Tomiko pointed to another plant and informed Shu that it was known as an acorn dandelion. Shu silently watched Tomiko eating the plant, thinking that she was definitely a squirrel. He supposed that was simply how things were. Shu looked around in amazement, remarking that there did not seem to be enough to satisfy his hunger, but the place was truly something else. The withered grass looked smooth and seemed to have useful properties. Since it was also very sturdy, he could use it like thread. If he collected enough of it, he might even be able to make a bed for himself. Shu approached another plant, having also wondered about the giant leaf for a while. An idea suddenly came to him. Right away, he wrapped the leaf around his waist like a skirt, finally no longer naked. Despite being hastily made, he found that it looked good enough. He then called out to Tomiko and asked whether she sensed any wolves or anything else nearby. Tomiko explained that animals like those did not come into the area often. Her mama had whispered to her that carnivorous animals usually squeaked away from the heavy floral smell of the oasis. Hearing that, Shu suggested that they live there. Tomiko hesitated, pointing out that if those animals entered the oasis, they would have nowhere to run. Shu agreed, recognizing that there could be no exception when it came to safety. After that, they spent their time setting up a base at their hideout by harvesting the necessary goods to make a basic living. Completely exhausted, Shu complained about how difficult it was to make a fire. Tomiko pointed out that it was because they were all damn. Unconsciously, Shu grabbed a mouse that was passing by. He was surprised by the unexpected agility he had displayed and wondered whether it was another benefit of leveling up. Tomiko scolded him, urging him to stop being such a sissy and to stop being pathetic by killing it completely. Shu inwardly explained that he had only been trying to keep the rodents away, squirrel buddy. Before killing the mouse, he apologized. Afterward, he was able to obtain a rat sporangium, though it was very small. Shu noted that since he could not handle stronger beasts like the ghost wolf just yet, dealing with smaller animals was perhaps the safest way to level up for now. Tomiko explained that leveling up this way would be very tough. She knew he was a small, squeaky human, but it would take around 10,000 rodents before he leveled up. Tomiko added that if Shu was going to hunt, he should try fighting either a ghost wolf or a blue goblin. Either of them was fairly weak for him to squeak against. Shu reacted in surprise at the mention of a goblin. Tomiko informed him that goblins were monkey-like creatures with dense fur covering their bodies. There were 3 types of goblins: red, blue, and green. The blue goblin was stronger than the green one and was on the same level as a ghost wolf. Shu wondered whether that was still above his level and whether they could go for the green one instead. Tomiko revealed that this floor only had blue and red goblins. The red ones were dangerous, as they were above level 15 and could apparently squeak out the fungal ability. Without a second thought, Shu decided that they were definitely going to avoid them. Tomiko continued by explaining that the red ones could squeak out fungal weapons or sometimes fungal balls as well. Shu questioned what fungal balls were. Internally, he admitted that he could not imagine what they looked like, though he wondered whether they might be tools that could be thrown. Filled with confusion, he asked whether Tomiko could use something like that. Tomiko immediately snapped at him, explaining that she could not do anything like that because she was a squeaking female and calling him a dumbass. Shu simply accepted this and shrugged it off before suggesting that they keep watch near the entrance of their hideout. Whenever they sensed a blue goblin or a ghost wolf nearby, it would become their battle for survival. Tomiko nodded and said that she would take care of waking up their bones. Shu, however, made it clear that she would be helping him. 3 days passed. Tomiko's loud voice echoed as she called out to Shu and urged the sleepyhead to wake up. Shu groaned in pain from her punch. Tomiko alarmed him by informing him that there was one nearby and that it was coming toward them. Hearing that, Shu was surprised and recognized that it was finally time. He wondered whether it was a ghost wolf or a goblin. Tomiko revealed that it was both. The 2 beasts were fighting because wolves and monkeys did not get along well together. She instructed Shu to squeak in when the fight was over, strike the last beast standing, and backstab it. Shu gripped his fist with determination, recognizing the advantage of being a third party. Slowly, however, fear surged through him. Tomiko scolded him to squeak up and hold it together. With a trembling voice, Shu reminded himself that he had no choice but to do it because he wanted to reach the surface. He calmed himself and declared that this was it, their first step. Nearby, just as Tomiko had said, the 2 beasts were fighting each other while Shu and Tomiko hid themselves. Shu noted that the blue goblin was perhaps a meter tall. It was ferocious and very nimble, but considering the level difference between the 2 beasts, the ghost wolf dominated. At that moment, the ghost wolf bit off the goblin's arm, defeating it instantly. Shu wondered whether the ghost wolf had triumphed. Suddenly, however, something sharp struck the ghost wolf's eye. Shu was shocked. Tomiko informed him that another one had squeaked into the fight, and it was the red goblin. She reacted in surprise upon seeing that the red goblin could squeak out fungal needles. Without wasting a second, the red goblin threw more needles at the ghost wolf before leaping toward it for the finishing blow. However, the ghost wolf, which seemed to have lost its strength, lunged at the red goblin and bit off its head, defeating it instantly. Nearby, both Shu and Tomiko were stunned by what they had witnessed. Just then, the ghost wolf let out a piercing roar. Shu broke into a cold sweat, realizing how insane the situation was. He had thought the red goblin was weak, but perhaps the ghost wolf was the strongest one. He wondered whether he would really be able to win against such terrifying monsters. The cornered wolf was the most terrifying one of them all. Worried, Tomiko called out to him. Although he was scared, Shu decided to stand up. He left the bone picking to Tomiko and then rushed toward the ghost wolf. Shu gripped his sword tightly as he rushed toward the beast. He thought that if an adult man carrying a katana at waist length with a skirt and charging at an enemy while screaming were seen by his co-workers, they would send him back to the hospital. With a piercing roar, Shu leapt toward the beast and swung his sword. After a few moments, the ghost wolf's body lay lifelessly on the ground. Tomiko's voice filled with concern as she pointed out that Shu was covered in blood and urged him not to die. Covered with wounds, Shu reassured her that he was fine and would be cured soon. He noted that although his opponent had been heavily wounded, this was the outcome, and he had won in the end. He wondered at how amazing it was that even such an injury could be healed, questioning which of them was really the monster. Just a few seconds later, his body was fully healed. Tomiko was amazed that he had returned to how he was before. Once she saw that he was fine, she immediately urged him to hurry and extract the sporangium, insisting that he stop wasting time. She sighed, pointing out how quickly she had changed despite crying just moments earlier. At that moment, a growl echoed nearby. Shu crashed back to the ground as his strength suddenly wavered. He glanced behind him and realized that the red goblin had survived, though its body was covered in heavy wounds. Meanwhile, Shu began to panic as his sword would not appear no matter how many times he summoned it. He wondered if he could not muster any energy because his wounds had not fully healed. Just then, the red goblin lunged at him, and Shu barely blocked the attack. The red goblin charged at him again, sending Shu crashing back to the ground. Tomiko called out to him worriedly. Shu gasped in pain from the impact and cursed inwardly, noting that the beast, even though it was on the verge of death, still packed quite a punch. As the beast approached, Tomiko rushed forward and shielded Shu with her small body. She tried to intimidate the red goblin, but her body trembled non-stop. Tomiko insisted on handling it herself and urged Shu to run away instead. At the next moment, the red goblin stretched out its hand toward her. Shu cursed inwardly as he forced himself not to become overwhelmed by it. If he did nothing, they would die. It was all the same. Suddenly, he noticed something. When he glanced at his finger, he saw something string-like coming out of his wound. He first wondered whether it was blood or a thread, but he soon realized that it was neither. It was a red fungal filament. Shu was momentarily shocked. Meanwhile, Tomiko was about to be swallowed by the red goblin, but at the right moment, Shu warned her to get away. Immediately, Shu threw the bundled fungal filaments toward the red goblin, striking its head with perfect accuracy. The moment the attack connected, flames erupted, setting the beast ablaze and burning it alive. Tomiko watched in amazement, instantly recognizing the technique as a fungal ball. Without wasting a second, Shu grabbed his sword and rushed toward the red goblin, which was desperately trying to extinguish the fire consuming its body. He raised his sword high and, with a loud shout, delivered the finishing blow. Tomiko suddenly called out to him and tossed a sporangium into his mouth, urging him to open it. After swallowing it, Shu called out to her. Alarmed, Tomiko quickly asked what was wrong. Shu let out a sigh and reassured Tomiko that he was fine and seemed to have leveled up. Hearing that, Tomiko exclaimed in relief and jumped toward him with tears in her eyes. Shu immediately pulled her away. He then noticed the blood covering her body and asked about the goblin. Tomiko explained that the blood was not hers and directed him to look around. Shu immediately glanced around and saw 3 beasts lying lifelessly on the ground. Slowly, reality began to sink in. He had truly survived. He could hardly believe it. A completely unbelievable, life-threatening situation had unfolded, yet an average man like himself, who had always lived carefully, had survived it. Shu began celebrating, amazed at their complete victory. Their 3 sporangium had become 6 in one squeak. Meanwhile, Shu wondered what it was that made him feel some enjoyment here. Tomiko explained that the fungal ball squeaked in 2 type. If he ate it, he would recover, and if he threw it, it would explode in flames. Shu was surprised to realize that they could heal him when ingested. He recalled that when he had thrown one earlier, the goblin had caught fire. As he thought about the flames, Shu slowly realized that if he had this skill, he could make a fire. Tomiko agreed with his idea. After that, with the acquisition of the flammable fungal balls, his chances of survival here had improved by a tiny margin. He had also obtained a throwing weapon for battles, but that did not make him a capable fighter. It became a daily routine for Tomiko to carefully bait monsters for him to take down. Panting heavily, Shu admitted that he could move better than before, but with all these injuries, all he could do was barely move. Tomiko smugly commented that he sure had squeaked with that blue goblin for a long time. Shu glanced at her and asked about her level and whether she had any skills that could help him in battle. Tomiko explained that small animals fought small and that she would not be much use if she stepped in. Groaning, she added that she was squeaking the feeling that she was going to remain there all the time. Shu noted in his thoughts that it would be difficult if Tomiko were caught by the wolves and that she should cling to him after all. Tomiko mentioned that there used to be a super strong metro beast around that area and that if it had still been there, Shu would be pooped by now. Hearing that, Shu questioned her level again. Then one day, something changed. Tomiko excitedly pointed out the pelt, mushrooms, and sporangium, praising Shu for squeaking well with today's harvest again. The two of them immediately expressed their gratitude for the food and began eating. The moment Shu swallowed the sporangium, some strange energy surged through his body. While eating, Tomiko noticed something was wrong. Shu explained that just now, his back had felt hotter and that it felt slightly different from a level up. Tomiko questioned whether he was squeaking for real and explained that if his back was hot, it meant he had obtained a new kinnu. Hearing that, Shu was surprised and wondered what he should do now. Tomiko instructed him to try squeaking some out like last time. Shu immediately did as she said. He repeatedly thought for it to come out and also tried whispering, praying, and chanting. Unconsciously, he became so absorbed in the moment that he even slipped into Tomiko's style of speaking. At that moment, something swirled in his palm. Shu excitedly realized that it had come out. Tomiko was equally excited, recognizing it as his new kinnu. At that moment, a shield appeared, leaving the two of them momentarily stunned. Shu tried to strike it with his sword and found that it felt just as hard as his fungal katana. It was a fungal shield. He realized that while it would not serve him offensively, it would at least help him in battle. Afterward, he fought another beast. Shu was shocked to realize that the shield repelled bite and claw attacks and that he could use it as a diversion. He recognized how useful it was. Suddenly, a realization struck him. This was the first time he had come out unscathed. With the same thought in mind, Shu and Tomiko turned to each other and began celebrating their victory. Laying exhaustedly, Shu muttered that this was so good. Tomiko added that it was quite something and urged him to keep squeaking at this rate. Shu immediately obeyed, then questioned once again about her level. Currently, Abe Shu was finally at level 7. Moments later, they returned to their base. Shu carved the number 36 into the wall. It had been half a year since he had walked up there, and he had changed a little. Facing the approaching ghost wolf, he steeled himself for the fight. Without warning, the beast launched an attack, but Shu dodged and counterattacked, though the ghost wolf evaded as well. The creature charged again, and Shu blocked it with his shield, forcing it backward. The ghost wolf rushed at him once more and Shu raised his sword, internally focusing on striking its neck. Suddenly, the ghost wolf clamped onto his sword, biting it and shocking him, while another ghost wolf attacked from behind. Tomiko warned him, and Shu quickly turned around as a fungal mass formed on his finger. He hurled it at the incoming wolf, igniting it in flames. Another ghost wolf immediately followed, but Shu reacted quickly, stabbing it in the stomach and bringing it down lifelessly. He sighed in relief, admitting that the ambush had scared him. Tomiko explained that the squeaking sounds of this wolf silenced its footsteps and that even she had not noticed it. The burning wolf whimpered as it struggled, and Shu placed his katana above it, apologizing before finishing it off completely. At that moment, Shu's level reached 17. Afterwards, they headed to the oasis. Shu still couldn't believe that he had gotten used to living there in half a year. Tomiko, who had recently reached level 14, noted that he had gotten stronger as well and had been fighting quite well that day. Shu acknowledged that it was all thanks to her guidance, then pointed out that he had already surpassed her level. In his mind, he noted that even though he had leveled up quite a bit and his body felt stronger, there was no outward change. That meant his parasitic fungal filament had gotten stronger instead of him. Even so, he had managed to make clothes from wolf's pelt, which he dried and sewed together using straw string. A bowl made from stone, used to mix mycelium leaves with hot water into a tea of sorts, was one of the few luxuries available. He also had a canteen for holding water, made from a wolf's bladder. Shu noted that it had been more than half a year since the last level up. He wondered whether their level was now too high to increase simply by killing wolves. Tomiko agreed that it was true, as these beasts could no longer squeak against them. Shu pointed out that he did not join in the fight though. Tomiko glared at him, making it clear that she was ready to squeak it up a notch with him. Shu ignored her and thought that while the metro beasts had the sporangium inside them, they did not reproduce at the same rate as a mushroom's fungal spores. They bred normally through male and female progression. He had once caught a glimpse of a newly born ghost wolf. Their numbers were not so small that he could exterminate the entire species by himself. He wondered what sort of influence overhunting ghost wolves would have on the ecosystem. If that happened, would the strongest class monsters begin dominating this level? Strong monsters such as ogres, orthrus, and others came to mind. Tomiko considered that they could squeak at this trash level for a bit longer and enjoy their prosperity. Shu sighed at her lack of drive. He then wondered whether, if only he could meet a woman around 30 in the metro, they should take the next step and try ascending. Tomiko responded that although he was still half-baked in terms of strength, he certainly had confidence. She also pointed out that the squeak from a noob to intermediate was one filled with danger. Shu agreed that what she said was reasonable. Tomiko explained that once he squeaked a bit more to level up, they could switch their main target to the Red Goblin. At the mention of them, Shu recalled those beasts in his mind. With burning determination, Tomiko made it clear that goblins were a dastardly bunch. They stank like ass, were dirty, and never shut the squeak up. Their disgusting laughs were annoying, and they would eat anything from a roach to a wolf. She intended to crush them so hard that they would go extinct. Hearing this, Shu wondered whether she had a personal grudge against goblins, although he was the one doing the fighting. Tomiko explained that their turfs and hideout were in different locations, so while they were en route, they might come across other strong beasts. Shu considered that unfortunate and suggested that she should collect information first. Tomiko handed him a sporantium and urged him to eat it instead of worrying, as she was already full. Shu accepted it and prepared to do so. However, the moment it entered his body, he suddenly felt the same sensation he had experienced back then. He quickly turned to Tomiko and informed her that his back had suddenly gotten hot. Tomiko leapt in excitement at the prospect of hearing about a new skill after so long and quickly urged Shu to try squeaking it. Shu acknowledged her and told her to step back a little. He concentrated, and slowly, strings emerged from his thumb and began to swirl, forming another fungal ball. He wondered what use it had. He immediately tested it by throwing it at a nearby tree, but nothing happened, making him realize that approach was apparently wrong. Nearby, he noticed a rat and caught it without warning. He wondered whether the fungal ball might only have an effect if it was eaten. With that thought in mind, he tried feeding the rat the fungal ball, and the rat immediately began eating it. Shu couldn't help but find it somewhat cute. Shortly after that, they returned to their hideout. Disappointed, Shu noted that he hadn't noticed anything different. Tomiko pointed out that the mouse seemed a little too lively. Shu glanced at her and wondered whether she could talk to the creature. Tomiko angrily rejected the idea of being lumped together with that son of a bitch and called Shu a damn delicate-faced man before telling him to find a rock to squeak and talk to instead. Shu smirked and questioned whether she was sure she wanted to say that. Without warning, he picked her up and threateningly decided that the next experiment would involve them eating his balls. Tomiko screamed that it was animal abuse and protested against having his stinky balls near her, repeatedly telling him to stop. The moment Tomiko tasted the fungal ball, however, her reaction changed as she found it extremely good. It was juicy, with a faint taste of sweetness, and she wondered whether it was the sweets from outside that her mommy had told her about. Shu also took a bite and determined that it wasn't those sweets. Upon tasting it, he found that it didn't seem to be poison and that he wouldn't call it particularly good. Still, he did feel somewhat energized, leaving him wondering what it was. Tomiko asked for another and wanted them to squeak out more about it. Seeing her puffed cheeks, Shu couldn't help but think that she was cute. In his mind, he reviewed the 5 fungal abilities he now possessed. The first was the regenerative filament. Minor injuries could be recovered in a few seconds, while heavy injuries required several minutes. Restoring serious injuries came with an onset side effect resembling a violent feeling of hunger. Shu wondered whether this ability was the reason he had survived for 100 years. The second was the fungal filament sword, a sword made from fungal filament whose physical properties resembled those of bone. It was light and surprisingly hard. The third was the fireballs, a valuable tool for attacking from a long distance. Once one hit a hard surface, the cocoon burst, creating a small explosion on impact and setting the target on fire. The fourth was the fungal filament shield. Its thickness measured around 5 centimeters, and its shape was circular. Its material was just as tough as the swords. The joint was strong enough to withstand emergency deployment even when summoned on the palm or the back of his hand. The latest addition was the mysterious fungal ball. When squeezed, it leaked sweet juice, and nothing happened even when it was ingested. Shu wondered whether it had some sort of medicinal effect. However, watching Tomiko eat it, he felt that aside from strengthening her heart, she was experiencing something else as well. The next morning, while washing his face, Tomiko suddenly alerted Shu that it was here. Shu turned toward her in confusion. At that moment, a creature arrived with a horn on its forehead. Shu wondered whether unicorns were strong. Tomiko explained that it was in a different class and, on this floor, was the top squeaker in terms of strength. Nothing else could touch it. She added that the creature did not attack anybody, and even if attacked, it only hastily ran away. However, if for squeak reasons it became serious, it would one punch, or rather, one kick and kill its opponent. Hearing that, Shu wondered how much experience eating its sporangium would give him. He considered whether he could hunt it somehow, perhaps by surprising it or feeding it poisonous food. Suddenly, the unicorn turned in their direction. Seeing its intimidating aura, Shu immediately abandoned the idea. Afterwards, they set out for another adventure. Tomiko explained that they would only inspect the goblin village that day and were not to fight yet. Shu acknowledged that he understood. Just then, a noise echoed nearby. Shu noted that even though they had planned otherwise, a battle could not be completely avoided. At that moment, the ghost wolf charged at him, but Shu defeated it in an instant. While eating the sporangium, he noted that it had taken only a minute and realized that he had really become quite strong. Then, all of a sudden, energy surged through Tomiko's body. She celebrated upon realizing that she had leveled up and was now level 15. She had squeaked to new heights. Shu congratulated her and recalled that this was the third time in half a year, meaning she had been level 12 when they met. Tomiko acknowledged that it seemed to be the case. Shu pointed out that she did not really need to hide it. Tomiko explained that it was inappropriate to ask a lady her age and level and that it was better to let others dream. Shu wondered whether she meant like an unmarried woman. Tomiko pointed out that Shu squeaked his level UPS quickly. He quickly squeaked past her, and it seemed that her eyes had not been wrong about him. She added that Shu was amazing and encouraged him to keep squeaking, certain that he would become a lot stronger. Hearing those remarks, Shu was momentarily stunned. He then scratched his face, slightly embarrassed, and acknowledged that there was nobody here to compare to, but that it was all thanks to Tomiko. In an instant, Tomiko's face changed into a smug expression. She agreed wholeheartedly, pointing out that if she had not been there, he would forever have been a snack for the wolf. Shu should therefore be grateful, damn Gobi. Seeing that, Shu remarked that bonus time sure had run out fast for those praises. Later on, they continued their journey. Tomiko informed him that it was time for the next part of the plan. She would go take a look, and if there were a lot of them, she would run away. Shu assured her that it was fine and urged her not to be rash. Just then, he saw a plant ahead. He admitted that it was his first time seeing it and noted that it reminded him of Lily of the Valley, though it was a little different. He then wondered whether it was edible. Upon seeing what he meant, Tomiko immediately warned him not to touch it. However, it was too late, as Shu's finger had already touched it. At that moment, the plant rang violently like a bell, causing a loud noise to echo throughout the area. Shu reacted in shock. Tomiko immediately cut the plant and the noise instantly stopped. Shu gasped in surprise. Tomiko turned angrily toward him and scolded him for being a fool, reminding him that she had already taught him not to touch any unknown plants. Shu quickly apologized and explained that it had not looked dangerous to him. Tomiko identified it as a Baluran plant and determined that it must have been a trap squeaky by the goblins. It would not be long before those monkeys came there. Tomiko began trembling nervously, realizing that the situation was bad, super squeaky bad. Shu wondered whether that meant the trap had remained there even after 100 years. Suddenly, he felt a chill run down his spine. He noticed that the atmosphere had somehow changed. He quickly got up and decided that they had to hide and return at once. Tomiko jumped onto his shoulder and agreed. At the same time, the goblins who had been busy eating heard the noise and immediately became alert, rushing toward the direction of the sound. Tomiko warned Shu that the goblins were coming. When he looked back, he saw 3 goblins chasing them. He cursed aloud and wondered whether they should fight, but Tomiko quickly refused, insisting that even for him, the 3 goblins would be too tough. There was a red one among them as well. Just then, a wolf charged at the goblins chasing them. Shu felt relieved at the sight, thinking that it might distract the goblins. However, the wolf was instantly killed, leaving him horrified. He immediately broke into a desperate run while Tomiko reacted in panic, describing the situation as very bad and cruel and recalling that this was why she hated goblins. Shu agreed with her, though he urged her to stop shouting in his ear. They passed through the area, while another wolf nearby silently watched them. Shu concluded that they had to shake the goblins off somehow, somewhere. In Chapter 5, Shu glanced back at the goblins chasing them and lamented that they had only ventured out a little, yet this was what they got for it. Tomiko panicked upon realizing that the goblins were squeaking after them. Shu stopped, realizing that there was no way around it, and told Tomiko to get away. Suddenly, the goblins froze as fear overtook them, then quickly retreated. Shu was confused by their sudden flight, but Tomiko began trembling with fear, her eyes filled with terror. Shu himself felt a chill run through his body. When he turned around, he saw a massive creature standing silently and staring at them. Its eyes were completely black, and Shu froze in place, shocked that he had not heard its footsteps. He wondered what it was. Tomiko's voice shook as she revealed that the monster's level was above 50. Hearing this, Shu tightened his grip on his sword and told Tomiko to escape immediately, as he would buy her some time. Tomiko hesitated, but Shu urged her to hurry. Before he could finish speaking, however, the monster suddenly appeared in front of him and attacked. Shu quickly summoned his shield, but the moment the blow landed, it shattered completely and sent him flying through the air. He coughed blood as he crashed heavily to the ground, his arm twisted as he struggled in pain. Tomiko called out to him in alarm and urged him to get a grip. Unable to move, Shu muttered that things were bad. The giant beast then reached toward him, and Shu realized that he was going to die there as the creature lifted him by the head. The monster opened its mouth, horrifying him, and tightened its grip. Shu writhed in agony as he desperately tried to break free. Meanwhile, Tomiko could no longer watch. She charged in, her small body landing on the beast's shoulder before she bit into it and demanded that the damn ape let go of Abe's shoe. Shu was shocked to see her, but the beast quickly smacked her off its shoulder with ease. Seeing blood on the beast's fur, Shu's expression froze. Nearby, Tomiko's small body fell motionless to the ground, covered in blood. Witnessing this, Shu screamed in rage and immediately activated his fungal balls, hurling them at the beast. They burst into flames, allowing him to break free from its grip. Without hesitation, he rushed toward Tomiko, but as he reached out to grab her, he realized that his arm had been torn off, and pain began to throb through his body. He looked up to see the beast roaring in anger as it launched another attack. Shu narrowly evaded it, but the next strike hit him in the back. Its claws pierced through his flesh and lifted him toward its mouth. In that moment, Shu forced his hands forward and detonated fungal balls inside the beast's mouth. The creature roared in pain as Shu crashed to the ground. As he fell, Shu looked toward Tomiko's unmoving body and desperately crawled to her. When he finally reached her, he picked her up with his regenerating hand. He then noticed fragments of shattered shells nearby and recalled that Tomiko's second fungal ability was fungal filament shell. It created a hard, lightweight shell for protection, much like a turtle's shell. At the very least, Tomiko had managed to guard against the attack. Even so, Shu's hope began to waver as he looked at her motionless form. He forced himself to believe that Tomiko would not die. He absolutely would not let her die. Immediately, Shu rushed back to their hideout. When they arrived, Shu immediately did his best to treat Tomiko. Panicking, he desperately wondered whether there was any other medicinal plant he could use. As he squeezed some plants onto her wounds, he reminded her that she was a magical beast and should not let some monkey swat her like a fly. He urged her to hang in there and resolved to do something to make her better. In his mind, Shu recalled that even though Tomiko was weak and a coward, she had still tried to save him. At the time, he had completely broken down and accepted his death. If Tomiko had not come to him then, he would have been finished. Seeing that Tomiko still had not woken up despite his treatment, Shu desperately urged her to wake up and remembered their plan to ascend together. He began to hate the fact that although he could heal his arm and abdomen as he pleased, he could not do anything for his partner when she was injured. He wondered why he even had this power if he could not use it to save her. Holding Tomiko's small hands, he desperately wondered what he should do and realized that if she was not with him, then he would be alone. Suddenly, Shu noticed something swirling. It was the strange ability he had recently acquired. Without any hesitation, he squeezed out the fungal ball, pouring its liquid into Tomiko's mouth, onto her hand, and over the areas where her wounds were. At that moment, Tomiko coughed, and her eyes finally opened. She first noticed Shu, who was on the brink of tears, and wondered why he was crying. Shu quickly denied that he was crying, reasoning that something had gotten into his eyes, and that was all. The next day, Tomiko had returned to her energetic attitude. She remarked that it was a useful ability, and that with Shu around, injuries would not be much of a problem. Shu explained that the ability had an absurd healing factor, but producing the fungal balls took a lot out of him. They finally discovered that his fifth fungal ability was the recovery ball, and that the liquid inside the ball healed injuries. Shu then noted that even so, the food they had stockpiled for emergencies sure ran out fast. Still, they had managed to come back alive from an encounter with such a huge level difference, so he was sure eating this much would not come back to bite them. However, they had barely gone out before this happened, making him wonder what kind of level it would take to get out of there. Suddenly, Tomiko stopped and apologized to him. Shu turned toward her in confusion. Tomiko then confessed that there was something she had not told him. In Chapter 6, Shu echoed her sentence in confusion, wondering whether she had left something untold. Tomiko reminded him that when they first met, she had mentioned that her mom had a partner. Shu recalled that and thought that if he became as strong as that man, there might still be hope. He then remembered that Tomiko had been born 5 years ago and that her mom had died the previous year. That left the question of what had happened to her partner. When he turned to her, Kamiko's eyes filled with despair as she revealed that her mom's partner had died on the 49th floor. Her mom, who had been pregnant with her at the time, had managed to run away. Once they climbed the stairs to the 49th floor, there was a boss monster waiting there. It was stronger than any Oni, ogre, or wraith. It was a true monster. Kamiko narrated to Shu that her mom and that human had fought the boss in a life-or-death battle on the 49th floor. The boss's strength had been far beyond their assumptions. Realizing that they could not defeat it, they decided to retreat. However, for some reason, the entrance door would not budge at all. They therefore decided to take refuge on the stairway to the 50th floor. To return to the surface, the two of them planned to fight the boss. After a week's time, they challenged the boss of floor 49 again. The hunter was defeated. Her mommy retreated to the 50th floor and gave birth to her. Her mom got married, so that was supposed to be the last time she would help the hunter. She remembered that her mommy had always wanted to meet up with her daddy. Once she got bigger, they would leave this place together. Her mom had explained that the door was a one-way trap. Shu gasped in disbelief at the realization that it could only be opened from the outside. Kimiko continued, explaining that they had believed there was a switch somewhere, so they frantically searched for it, but they were unable to find it. While they were being attacked, her mom had told her to go down first and that she would follow right after. In the end, however, her mom had done so to let her get away. Tomiko's words faltered as tears began streaming down her face. Shu comforted her, realizing that she had been doing her best on her own since then. He then stroked her head. Shu released a heavy sigh as he thought about the boss and asked her what kind it was. Tomiko revealed that it was a slime. Shu repeated the answer in surprise, wondering if she meant those semi-transparent blobs of liquid. Tomiko confirmed that it had a massive, round shape. No matter how they attacked it, it did not budge at all. Hearing that, Shu silently thought that it seemed to match with what he knew. Tomiko suddenly admitted that when she first met him, he had not known anything and had been mentally weak to boot. If she had been completely honest with him, she had thought his spirit would break. Shu agreed that it was true. He noted in his mind that even though he was a loner, he was quite fond of being an observer of others. If Tomiko had told him that back then, he was not sure he would have been able to take it. Tomiko continued, telling him that when her mom had come there, she had been level 38, while her partner had been over level 50. Hearing that, Shu concluded that unless they became strong enough to defeat not only the monsters there but the boss as well, getting out would be very difficult. The two of them immediately fell silent at the unrealistic condition. Shu then asked about her injuries. Tomiko reassured him that she was okay, even though she liked the recovery balls. She repeated her statement to him again, as if hinting at something. Shu responded that she seemed fine and told her that he would make one for now. He then asked Tomiko whether she wanted to go to the surface to meet her dad. She immediately admitted that it was one of the reasons she wanted to meet him, but she had heard a lot about the surface from her mommy. The surface was also perfectly all sparkly, with a lot of people and cities that were eye-poppingly large. There were things so delicious that their cheeks would not stop squeaking. There was also the so-called sun on the ceiling, a very big light testicle, though Shu corrected her understanding that it was not a testicle. Tomiko added that at night, they could see scenery full of sparkling stars, and she wanted to look at it. Shu could not help but smile. Tomiko glanced at him and added that she had also heard that the surface had a lot of good-looking males. Shu pointed out that it had quickly taken on a different meaning. Tomiko reflected that she was weak, so she had given up on reaching it, but she had always been thinking of leaving this place. At the time she met Shu, she had thought it was her last chance. She harshly remarked that he was smooth all over with a delicate face, knew nothing, and was a damn weakling at level 1. Shu cut her off with a sarcastic response, expressing his regret at being so disappointing. Tomiko added that even so, she was glad that it had been him. Hearing that, Shu was stunned. Tomiko explained that Shu was a good guy and that she somehow understood now what mommy had meant, with being together with their partner being an exciting experience. Embarrassed at her confession, Shu squeezed the fungal ball on her face. He then thought that somehow, lately, it felt like he was going with the flow. Moments later, as they were about to sleep, Tomiko asked what Shu wanted to do when he reached the surface. Shu answered that first, he would confirm what had happened to the surface with his own eyes. After that, he would go for some tasty stuff like yakiniku or ramen, drink some beer, sleep on a bed, and then wear better clothes. If there were smartphones, he would watch videos. After that, perhaps marriage. He admitted that when he thought about all this, he felt more driven to go through with it. Tomiko turned to him and asked whether he would not continue to be a hunter. Shu asked in surprise whether that sort of choice was also available. He decided that he would think about it when he got out. Tomiko remarked that one day Shu would get there and that, if it was him, he would become an amazing hunter. She insisted that her eyes were not wrong. Shu told her that he was flattered and wondered whether it was because he was the first hunter she had seen. Tomiko answered that it was because she was partnered with him. Shu was momentarily stunned, then suddenly burst into laughter. Tomiko immediately complained that it was a serious conversation, but the moment Shu tickled her belly, she began begging for more. Shu then remarked that an amateur and a small animal had managed to survive in this hellhole for half a year, and if anything, that was quite amazing. Filled with newfound resolve, he added that yesterday had been a harsh experience, but from tomorrow onward, they would continue advancing steadily. They would keep hunting wolves and goblins. Someday they would get revenge on that freaking monkey, though he was afraid that was a goal for the long term. First, they should become more experienced. For now, they should aim for level 50. That was what they would go with. Kimiko agreed. Shu told her not to say it like that. Deep inside, Shu swore to himself that no matter how long it took, he was going to reach the surface. If he was being honest, the trauma from meeting the Wraith would remain for a while. Even so, he had to keep on going, together with Tomiko. Suddenly, Tomiko called out to him and recalled that he had wanted to get married. Shu answered that if he got the chance, he would, Tomiko fidgeted and admitted that unlike her, Shu was smooth, so he was not really her type. After saying that, Tomiko glanced at him. She turned her back again and added that his personality was not bad, that Shu was serious and would take care of his family. She stopped again and glanced at him before continuing that if he insisted and there were no other good male partners, she would not mind marrying him, you know. Without hesitation, Shu rejected the possibility, pointing out that Tomiko was a squirrel after all. Hearing that, Tomiko sent a powerful blow into his face. Meanwhile, somewhere else, it was not until the fifth host that the wandering parasite developed anything resembling an ego. The first host was a cockroach. Back then, she was not aware of her own existence. She only had an accumulation of the host's memories and a copy of its abilities. Furthermore, if the host was eaten or there was a living being near the host's dead body, she would transfer to that living being. It was not a conscious decision but rather instinctual. The fifth host was a wolf. Compared to her previous hosts, its brain volume was a lot bigger, and as a consequence, she developed a consciousness. She could understand the world and her environment on her own. She was able to experience everything through her host. Food and water, natural enemies and brethren, children and territories, vegetation and caves, the darkness and the hard ground, as well as her own emotions and sensations. Hunger, anger, joy, thirst, fear, irritation, pain, sound, and smell all became experiences she could perceive. As a parasite at the time, she still had no intention or means to control her host's actions or thoughts. She lived in the host's shadow, experiencing everything it did. But one day, what she saw through the host's eyes made her grow exponentially as an ego. What she saw was a living being with little hair that resembled a monkey and ran on 2 legs. Before long, it was defeated and about to be crushed by the big white monkey that appeared. The host only cared about whether or not it could find any remains after the battle. The difference in power was made clear, and without an arm, only death was awaiting it. However, even without an arm, it resisted the monkey, frantically ending that existence. And like that, the living being escaped. The impact of what unfolded created a dazzling spark. It lit a clear and unmistakable emotion within her. It was beautiful. Before long, her host was dead. Again, she moved to a different one. Faced with death, the image of that living being fighting against that monkey without an arm was deeply etched into her memory. It had been 2.5 years since they met the Wraith. They were currently experiencing their 3rd spring season, even though there were no seasons in this Otsuka metro station. After defeating another beast, Shu immediately swallowed its sporangium. He then called out to Tomiko, announcing that it was finally here. They had achieved level 50. The two quickly exchanged a high five. Shu then suggested that they go to the oasis before hunting again. He wanted to wash himself immediately. Tomiko covered her nose and commented that he smelled so bad. While brushing their teeth, Shu noticed that the unicorn was here again that day. This creature with a wee bit of a chip on its pointy horn had been nicknamed Unio-san. It had been about a year since they had been able to come this close to it. As usual, Shu could not hear the unicorn's footsteps. He wondered if this was its fungal ability and was sure it was the same deal with the Wraith as well. Without hesitation, Shu greeted Unio-san good morning. However, it simply ignored him. Shu muttered a curse, noting that it was still far from opening up to him. Even though he had a feeling it came here when they were here, he could only think of it as some sort of pure maiden from one of those fantasy novels. Tomiko told him that she was also a maiden, and Shu nodded in response. Suddenly, she boldly asked whether he was a virgin. Shu was surprised and remarked that her mom should not teach her daughter such useless words. Tomiko pressed for an answer, while Shu immediately looked away and dismissed the matter before deciding that they should just go. Afterward, they went to another area. As he looked around, Shu mentioned that they had snuck into the goblin area before, but he had not expected there to be a place like this here. Tomiko told him that it was the grass-covered ogre plains. Shu silently recalled that the ogres were the leading species on this 50th floor of Otsuka Metro in terms of fighting and ability. Their toughness exceeded the wraiths, and they were highly intelligent. They should proceed with caution. Right away, Shu activated his 10th fungal ability, the sensory spores. Using the ability, the super small particles that were invisible to the naked eye were ejected from his body into the atmosphere. Once they stuck to something, he could sense its outline. At that moment, Shu sensed that inside on the right, there was one beast on top of a pillar nest. He did not sense any other beasts. With that, Shu decided that they would hunt it. Before jumping off from his shoulder, Tomiko reminded him not to drop his guard. The moment the beast spotted him, it immediately leapt down from the pillar and confronted Shu. When Shu saw the ape's face, he was stunned, thinking that it was somehow a good-looking ape. Tomiko cheered that the current Shu could beat it. Suddenly, the ape released a deafening roar, prompting Shu to activate his 6th fungal ability, the fungal filament hammer. He remarked internally that he was about to lose to a good-looking ape. Summoning his shield, Shu shouted at the ape not to underestimate him before charging forward without hesitation. As his hammer struck the target, he questioned whether the attack had been effective. However, he noted in his thoughts that these apes had very wide gaps between their attack. If he aimed for those openings and continuously hit its body, Just then, the ape retreated and activated its fungal ability as something sprouted from its finger before it charged at Shu again. Tomiko quickly warned Shu to be careful, explaining that the ape had powered up. While waiting for the ape to reach him, Shu thought that the creature was like a junkie. Before the ape's powerful fist could land, Shu activated his ninth fungal ability, Enhanced Jump, dodging the strike before delivering a blow while descending. The ape panted heavily from the fierce battle, and Shu noticed that it was pretty exhausted now. He wondered if he should go for a battle of attrition. Suddenly, Tomiko called out to him and warned him that the others might be coming there. Hearing that, Shu decided that he could not hold back and would go all out. He then activated his 12th fungal ability, the Smoke Screen Ball, instantly filling the area with thick smoke that blocked all visibility. Using his sensory spores, Shu located the ape's exact position and immediately activated Enhanced Jump, leaping toward it before swinging his fungal hammer with full force. Afterward, he vanished back into the smoke while the enraged ape searched blindly for him. Taking advantage of the confusion, Shu repeatedly delivered powerful blows to its body until he finally defeated the ape beast. He apologized to the creature and said that he would put it to rest now before ending its life completely. Looking around, Shu remarked that it was quite a nice sight and that it was kind of a pity that they had to snatch away the nest. But it was the victor's right. He then noticed that Tomiko had surely grown up. Tomiko told him that she was 8 years old now, so she was still in her growth period. She was still nowhere close to mom's level, but she thought she was about as big as she had been. She recalled that Tomiko's mother had been actively hunting until she was 35 years old. He wondered if their years were counted the same as human years. Tomiko was leveling slower than him and only had 4 abilities. Shu then called out to Tomiko, mentioning that little by little, they were able to hunt ogres. Tomiko confirmed that was right. Shu added that they had become strong enough to win in this area if it was a one-on-one fight. Tomiko agreed. Shu then suggested that he thought they should challenge a boss at least once for now. He explained that even if they did not win against the boss, they could try fighting it and collect all the information they could, and they should be strong enough to run away. Tomiko replied that she was sure Shu was currently just as strong as her mom's partner. Even so, her mom's partner had not won, so they should do that only after preparing some more. Shu agreed, acknowledging that she was not wrong. But he insisted on the idea that after experiencing it once, it would serve as a measuring stick and they would know what to work on. They had a way to protect themselves and the fungal recovery abilities, so at the very least, they would not die. Despite hearing those points, Tomiko still hesitated. She realized that she was feeling anxious. It was no wonder, because this was an opponent that her mother's party had lost their lives to, after all. Silence filled the space between them. To ease the tension, Shu tickled her belly. Tomiko complained that this was a serious conversation and that he should stop joking around. But just like before, she quickly submitted. She then said that she understood the logic behind his idea. However, she had one condition. She would agree if they went for this floor's boss. Shu reacted in surprise, realizing that there was a boss on this floor as well. This was the first time he was hearing of it. Tomiko replied that, even if he called it a boss, that one was a stray metro beast. Afterward, they headed to the boss area. Shu was surprised to realize that there was a place like this as well. It seemed like an underground waterway. He remarked that it was completely irrational, a metro flood that was. Tomiko informed him that it should be somewhere around there. She had heard that it was the same level as her mom's partner. Shu replied that this meant it was around his level. He then wondered about the stray metro beast. At that point, Tomiko was level 28. Her abilities were Enhanced Hearing, Fungal Filament Shell, Level Scouter, and Super Hardening Front Teeth. Shu was level 50. His abilities were Regenerative Fungal Filament Sword, Fireball, Fungal Filament Shield, Recovery Ball, Fungal Filament Hammer, Electric Ball, Fungal Filament Great Shield, Enhanced Jump, Sensory Spores, Fungal Filament Ball with unknown effects, Smoke Screen Balls, and Repellent Spores against monsters. Tomiko explained that while the stray metro beast was supposed to be on an upper floor, it had somehow wandered in there. It could not return because of the boss on the 49th floor, so it stayed there, became stronger, and now roamed the place. Hearing that, Shu mentioned that it sounded familiar. Tomiko continued, explaining that its den was in the direction of the stairs. There was a possibility of encountering the boss if it tried to fly there. Shu asked in surprise whether it could fly and wondered if it was a bird. Tomiko denied it and was about to say something when, all of a sudden, a noise echoed nearby. Shu quickly told Tomiko to hide until it was over. Behind him, a beast flew toward him at tremendous speed. Sensing its approach, Shu immediately lowered himself while throwing filament balls that exploded upon colliding with the creature. However, the beast emerged completely unharmed. Shu was shocked as he realized that the creature had mimicked a rock, finally understanding that it was a gargoyle. The beast stared at him hungrily. Shu muttered about how scary it was and thought that this guy was definitely strong. He urged himself to move, realizing that it was not the time for regrets, and immediately activated his 8th fungal ability, the Fungal Filament Great Shield. At that moment, the beast unleashed a powerful shockwave that forced Shu to halt. Confused, he wondered what it was while complaining that his ears hurt. The beast then landed directly in front of him, leaving Shu stunned as he realized that, on top of being a flying type, it was also fast and powerful. In addition, it had ultrasonic waves. Impairing someone with them and then attacking seemed to be its winning pattern. He immediately threw a smoke screen, causing thick smoke to spread throughout the area. As he concealed himself within the smoke, he thought that he needed to do something about those ultrasonic waves. Suddenly, he sensed killing intent approaching, and the beast attacked him with its sharp claws, though Shu barely managed to dodge in time. In that instant, he finally understood that bats understood their environment by echolocation. Shu gritted his teeth, realizing that he had made his vision worse for nothing. While running to create distance, the beast unleashed another ultrasonic wave, causing Shu to stop in pain as he covered his ears. He cursed internally, noticing that the creature was using the same pattern. However, the moment the beast rushed toward him to close the distance, Shu instantly swung his sword, sending the gargoyle flying away from him instead. Shu smirked, remarking that it had been close, but the pattern was not going to work on him anymore. It had been the right decision to use the recovery ball as an earplug. He noted in his thoughts that the beast's skin was very hard, almost like stone. If he did not put everything he had into his swing, he was not going to be able to reach its flesh. Keeping his distance was disadvantageous. He had to make this a close-ranged fight. With that in mind, Shu activated his ability and leapt from wall to wall until he reached the beast in midair. The instant Shu attacked with his sword, the beast blocked it with its claw, shocking him as his body fell back toward the ground. The beast launched another strike, but Shu defended himself with his fungal shield, reminding himself that it was fungal filament after all. Using the wall as leverage, he pushed off once more and charged toward the creature, delivering a powerful blow to its stomach that sent it crashing to the ground. Without wasting any time, Shu followed up with another attack using his electric ball. The moment it struck the beast, electricity surged through its body, electrocuting it. This was Shu's seventh fungal ability, Electric Ball. The moment its cocoon was broken, it discharged electricity. Shu noted that even if it was damn hard, if it was affected by electricity, then there were gaps in its armor. Shu landed beside the convulsing beast and swiftly severed its wings, thinking that with this, it could not fly anymore. Now all he had to do was shave away at it like usual. However, his thoughts were interrupted when the electrified beast suddenly stood up again, its eyes fixed directly on him. The creature charged once more, and Shu blocked it with his shield before slashing at it again, causing blood to burst from its torn flesh. Even so, the beast continued attacking relentlessly. Shu was stunned that it still refused to go down. He continued striking it, severing its limbs one after another, unable to believe that this guy was still not done. Then, all of a sudden, the beast unleashed another ultrasonic wave attack. Shu endured the pain caused by the deafening noise, and the moment it subsided, he immediately slammed his shield into the beast, staggering it briefly before using his sword to slice its body apart piece by piece, finally defeating it completely. After the intense battle, Shu let out a deep breath. Tomiko called out to him, praising his efforts and saying that he had done an amazing job. Shu replied that the beast was seriously strong, and that it was not just its attacks but its tenacity as well. Deep inside, however, Shu felt despair as he reflected on how the beast had been alone there, in a place full of enemies. Even so, it had not wanted to die. It had survived in this hellhole up until that day. And if they had not come there that day? Sensing his silence, Tomiko interrupted his thoughts, and Shu gently stroked her head, reassuring her that it was nothing. He then suggested that they partake, and Tomiko asked if he meant its sporangium. After extracting the sporangiums from the beast's body, Shu turned to her and said that they should be diligent and prepare for tomorrow's provision. Tomiko was amazed that he was facing forward. She then said that she would soon squeak to his head, starting from the middle being a bit extreme. Shu told her that he had seen it, even though it was only now. Tomiko asked what he meant. Shu explained that what he meant was their expression of gratitude. They should be grateful for this one's life. Internally, Shu admitted that he was aware of these selfish thoughts, but there was definitely something that he had gained from it. And the opponent to throw it all against existed on the upper floor. Chapter 9 begins. The next day, Shu turned to Tomiko to check whether she was ready, but Tomiko remained silent. Shu understood that she was anxious, and as expected, even after everything they had done yesterday, it had not helped. Tomiko then asked Shu for a promise that he would not go overboard, and Shu assured her that he knew. With that, the two began their journey toward the 49th floor. As they moved through the area, Tomiko informed Shu that an Orthros was ahead. Tomiko's third fungal ability enabled her to measure another's level, making it essentially a level scouter. Until now, they had relied on Tomiko's mother's knowledge, but with this ability, they were able to determine each individual's level. Tomiko determined that the Orthros was level 40 and posed no threat. She asked what Shu would do, and he decided that getting ambushed would be bad, so they should attack immediately. In an instant, Shu defeated the monster and extracted the sporangium from its body. He noted that they should prepare as best as they could before the boss, and Tomiko agreed with the idea. She informed him that after this, they would arrive at the stairs to the 49th floor. Shu was momentarily stunned as he stared at the small entrance ahead. He wondered whether there was any chance of the boss chasing them through the stairs, then considered whether it would even fit through there. The thought made him wonder if it was really that big. Without any more hesitation, Shu decided that they should go. As he climbed the stairs, the journey brought him back to his salaryman days. He did not know what was going on outside, but if he could pass through here, he could find out. Moments later, Shu remarked that the pathway was quite long and that they should rest for a while. Tomiko informed him that she was not tired yet. Shu pointed out that she was always on his shoulder and wished that he could be carried for once. Tomiko quickly suggested dragging him along the ground instead. Shu apologized and clarified that it had only been a joke. After that, they continued along their path, and not long afterward, they finally arrived. Tomiko warned Shu that the boss had probably already noticed them as well. Shu gently carried her small body and placed her on the ground, leaving her to watch from there. Anxiously, Tomiko reminded him to make sure he did not go overboard and to immediately squeak to safety if things became dangerous. Shu kept that in mind before setting off into the area where the boss was. Upon finally seeing it in person, Shu's body froze. A massive creature was only a short distance away from him, and his body shuddered at the sight. Although he could not see any facial features, he knew for a fact that it recognized his existence as prey. At that moment, something flew toward him, but Shu immediately sensed it and blocked it with his shield. Without hesitation, the slime launched another attack, extending its body like a tentacle at incredible speed toward Shu and forcing him to dodge immediately. As he avoided the strike, he reflected on how fast it was and how there was no preemptive movement before it struck. Shu's shield crumbled under the continuous attack. Under the continuous assault, Shu's shield crumbled apart. The tentacles then sprayed liquid toward him, and Shu quickly summoned another shield to block it, only to realize as it slowly dissolved that the liquid was acid. He immediately retaliated by throwing a fireball and an electric ball at the slime. The moment they struck its body, they exploded, melting the area they hit. Seeing that, Shu wondered whether the attack had worked, but the melted portion soon bounced back and returned to its original form. Shu was shocked to see that it had already returned to how it was. Instantly, the slime attacked again, stretching countless tentacles toward him. Shu cursed aloud upon realizing that the slime remained unfazed. He noted that not only was he unable to read its movements because it had no joints, but it could also reach anywhere within the space. The moment acid touched Shu's sword, the blade melted instantly. While running from the pursuing tentacles, he desperately wondered what he should do. Suddenly, the area exploded and thick smoke spread everywhere. Seeing this, Tomiko anxiously called out to Shu. Meanwhile, Shu had managed to survive the previous attack. He recalled Tomiko's words about her mother explaining that although the slime was an absolute monster, it had internal organs located around its center. If an attack could reach them, there was a chance of defeating it. With that in mind, Shu quickly threw his sword toward the slime. The moment it struck the jelly-like body, he immediately slammed his fungal hammer onto the embedded blade, forcing it deeper into the creature. Shu wondered whether the attack had worked and whether he had reached the slime's weak point. Suddenly, the slime's body trembled, and without warning, it erupted, releasing tentacles in all directions. Several struck Shu and threw him backward. As he was pushed away, intense pain surged through his body before he crashed to the ground, where he saw his severed leg lying nearby. Shu gasped in agony as he realized that the acid from the tentacle had eroded his leg. He had reached his limit. Immediately, Shu called out to Tomiko and decided that they had to run away. Tomiko quickly responded, and while Shu attempted to run toward the exit, he reflected that he had at least gained experience with how the slime attacked and how fast it was. That was a satisfactory result. Just then, Tomiko warned him that something was coming from behind. Shu realized that acidic liquid was about to hit him, and when he looked back, he saw that it was approaching rapidly. He recognized the danger and knew that if he were drenched in it, he would have to sidestep the attack. However, Tomiko was there, so he could not dodge. Shu quickly stopped, summoned his shield just in time, and blocked the acid as it splashed against it. Tomiko screamed in concern as she watched him. Afterward, Shu slowly opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was Tomiko, who worriedly checked whether he had awakened and urged him to hurry down the stairs. Critically wounded, Shu expressed his relief at seeing that she was safe. Tomiko thanked him and said that she would squeak him to the safety zone so he could rest. Right away, Tomiko bit off his skin and dragged him, but Shu groaned in pain and quickly warned her that his body was heavily wounded. Although grateful to her, he insisted that he would do it himself. Slowly, Shu sat up and was shocked to see that his leg had not grown back. Tomiko scolded him, reminding him of what she had said and reprimanding him for squeaking so much simply because he could heal. Because he had taken so much damage, he was still far from recovered. She added that even his delicate features looked rotten, just like Wraith. Despite the pain, Shu smirked and replied with a shaky voice that he guessed he looked a bit more memorable. Internally, he cursed at the horrible last-ditch effort. For now, he decided that returning to the hideout had to take priority over focusing on the pain, especially since the hunger he felt was becoming pretty intense. Just then, Shu's body collapsed on the stairs and rapidly descended to the ground. Tomiko quickly went to him, filled with worry. Shu thought it was strange that Tomiko had made so much progress while he was out cold. However, his dissolved leg and burned skin had yet to recover, and considering how much time had passed, they should have been further along. Shu's eyes widened as he realized that his recovery might have stopped. He then understood that there were so many damaged spots on his body that his stamina had run out, meaning that at this rate, his injuries would not recover and he would be unable to move. Shu let out a cry as he muttered that he needed something to eat. Slowly, his hand reached out toward Tomiko, but it immediately stopped when he realized what he was about to do, and he told himself that it was wrong. However, Tomiko reassured him that it was fine if he ate her. She repeated that he could eat her and that, if doing so meant he would get better, she was fine with it. This time, she would be the one to save him. Tomiko added that if he was Abe Shu, then even if he were alone, he would eventually take down the boss on his own and move up to the surface. Without letting her finish, Shu rejected the idea as foolish and insisted that eating her would not be enough to fill himself. He decided that he was better off eating rock. With that determination, Shu forced himself to eat one, but he coughed non-stop and spat it out. He then asked Tomiko to bring him something, saying that it did not matter whether it was a mushroom or grass. Immediately, Tomiko acknowledged him and went to get something. Tomiko sprinted very fast, and just ahead of her was a goblin. Without wasting a moment, she killed it and dragged its corpse back to where Shu was. She called out to him and announced that she had brought mushrooms and a goblin. She added that she could do it if she tried and that she had squeaked the goblin real good. Shu reacted in amazement, but then he noticed that his hand had begun trembling frantically. He realized that this was no good because if he had zero stamina, his fungal abilities would not work either. Tomiko urged him to hang on. Fired with determination, Shu forced himself to move and hungrily ate the mushrooms. Then he grabbed the goblin's corpse, tore it apart, ripped its flesh, and immediately swallowed it. At that instant, his regenerating abilities activated again. He immediately squeezed some healing balls toward Tomiko and urged her to hold on. In an instant, her body healed. Tomiko asked whether he had recovered. Shu thanked her, acknowledging that it had only been possible because of her. He declared that when they left this place, they would absolutely do it together. After that, they observed the boss from the stairs for a while. Shu reacted in shock upon realizing that the boss was level 70 and questioned whether Tomiko was sure. Tomiko replied that it was strange because, according to her mom, it had been around level 60 before. She pointed out that the outside of the door to the outside was full of slime and explained that, thanks to those cornering monsters, it seemed to have grown. Shu finally understood that this was how it had been able to grow even while in there. He then asked whether there had been any slimes on floor 50. Tomiko answered that there were a few normal ones. Right away they set off to hunt slimes. After killing one effortlessly, Shu understood that its weak spot was just as her mom had said. It could be educational. Suddenly, acid dripped onto Tomiko's fur, causing her to panic over how much the acid was smearing onto her and plead for someone to save her root. Without delay, Shu gave her a recovery ball. In his mind, he noted that if they wanted revenge, they had to observe and study. Outside of that, they could only increase their levels. 2 years passed since he had fought the slime. Shu was finally at level 65 and had 16 fungal abilities, while Tomiko was level 40 and had 5 fungal abilities. Tomiko offered to give Shu a smart haircut with her front teeth if he wanted. Shu pointed out that all she wanted to do was make him bald. Tomiko told him to stop nitpicking and stay still, reassuring him that he would feel a lot of relief. Shu still refused and insisted that she stop because all he wanted was to smooth his face. Suddenly, Shu stopped when he noticed that the unicorn had arrived. He quickly greeted it with good morning, and the unicorn snorted in response. Shu told it not to do that and understood that it was requesting recovery balls. Without delay, he gave one to the unicorn. After eating it, the unicorn was finally satisfied. Shu suddenly called to the unicorn and explained that today they would likely have to part ways. They were going to get revenge on the 49th floor's boss, and if they won, they would go up. They would not return here. He added that it was not set in stone, but the unicorn and they had finally become friends, making it a bit of a shame. Shu told the unicorn to stay healthy and asked it not to forget them. Tomoko added the same request. All of a sudden, the unicorn turned around. Seeing that, Shu wondered if his feelings had not gotten through, but he was glad that they had gotten to meet it in the end. The unicorn suddenly dashed toward the wall and crashed itself against it, leaving both Shu and Tomiko in shock. Shu tried to call out to Unio-san. The unicorn bit its broken horn and dropped it into Shu's hands. Shu reacted in surprise, realizing that the unicorn was giving it to them, something so great. Tomiko reassured him that it was fine because unicorns could regrow their horns, so if they ever met again, it would squeak a brand new horn. Shu turned to the unicorn and expressed his gratitude, swearing that he would take good care of it and that someday he would come and see the unicorn again. Afterward, the unicorn let out a loud shriek before sprinting away. Both Shu and Tomiko's eyes filled with tears. Shu remarked that after receiving something like this, losing would be very not cool. Tomiko agreed with him. Meanwhile, outside their hideout, a beast desperately fled as a rain of acid flew toward it. The creature continued running until it suddenly stopped after encountering the boss slime. At the same time, Shu and Tomiko packed their food and crawled out from their hideout. Shu declared that it was time to go, and before leaving, he bowed at the entrance of the hideout in gratitude for everything it had provided them. Seeing this, Tomiko quickly followed his example. Elsewhere, the beast that had been chased by the slimes was swallowed whole by the boss slime, and its body melted away until nothing remained but bones. Meanwhile, Shu and Tomiko prepared themselves for battle, and Shu announced that they would finally bid farewell to that floor. In the middle of using Tomiko's level scouter ability, she observed the slime boss. After gathering information, she immediately returned to Shu and informed him that it was stronger than before, squeaking above level 70. Shu replied that he understood, but the memory of the battle from 2 years ago resurfaced in his mind, causing his fist to tremble. Seeing this, Tomiko nervously asked if he was scared, her own body shaking as she declared that she would fight together with him too. That fake acorn-like thing would crack before her. Hearing that, Shu finally relaxed slightly and let out a small chuckle before patting her head and joking that it would be funny if she became bald again. Tomiko angrily shouted that he should forget that ever happened. Shu realized that even when fighting alone, he would not be entirely by himself. He bumped his fist against Tomiko's tiny hand and said that when push came to shove, he would be counting on his partner. Tomiko confidently reassured him to leave it to her, then suddenly called out to him again and told him to win. Shu nodded in response. He then removed his clothes, leaving himself half naked to prepare for battle, and summoned his katana. Standing before the towering enemy, Shu wondered if it was because of his trauma from these past 2 years, but the slime looked bigger than before. At that moment, the slime attacked, but Shu swiftly dodged, causing the attack to crash into the ground instead. Gritting his teeth, Shu remarked that, as usual, it packed quite the power. He immediately activated another ability, causing his sword to glow brightly before he slashed through one of the slime's tentacles. The moment it was severed, acid splashed out violently. Seeing the result, Shu realized that this method would work. The ability he had used was his 5th fungal ability, luminescent spores. If these spores enveloped his sword or shielded it, they increased the sharpness or toughness of the item. Shu then activated another ability, and threads began twisting from his back before forming into 2 arms. This was his 6th fungal ability, the fungal filament arms. The grown arms were also able to use abilities. Just then, the hands growing from Shu's back each summoned their own swords, creating a 3-sword style for the second round. At that moment, the slime attacked once again with its tentacles. Shu gritted his teeth, thinking about how those tentacles had no joints or indication of their starting motion, how there were seldom any feints, and how their movement was difficult to follow. But that was fine. He only had to concentrate. With swift movements, Shu severed the incoming tentacles one after another. He taunted the slime, asking if it had missed him and demanding that it keep coming at him. Acid burst out from the severed tentacles, but Shu smirked, convinced that everything was going great. He recalled that the slime was made up of 3 different layers. The first layer was called membrane, the slime's cellular flexible muscles that covered the inner fluid. The second layer was called body fluid. Those exposed to it would be subjected to a strong acid. The third layer was called the nucleus, containing the brain and the other vital organs. The information Tomiko's mother had left her was true. If they destroyed the nucleus, the slime would die. Its nucleus was protected by a large quantity of fluid. When it came to the boss slime, the amount was nothing to joke about at all. Therefore, the most straightforward and steady tactic for Shu was to chip away at its tentacles. With that strategy in mind, Shu charged toward the slime again and severed more tentacles using both his swords and fungal balls. The torn tentacles crashed onto the ground as acid splashed toward him, but he immediately blocked it with his shield. Shu then skidded backward across the ground, panting heavily as he admitted to himself that, as expected, the drain on his stamina was enormous from continuously using these fungal abilities. Each successful attack diminished the amount of luminescent spores, and he was already at his limit for replenishing them. He wondered if slimes became fatigued. Compared to when he had started, the slime was definitely getting smaller. With that, Shu decided it was time to take a break. He immediately threw a fungal smoke screen ball and detonated it around himself, causing thick smoke to spread through the area. Taking advantage of the cover, he quickly exited the boss chamber. Tomiko welcomed him back, and Shu exhaustedly admitted that he needed a small break. Tomiko praised him for how well it was going and offered him some water before scolding him and reminding him that his footwork was important. Suddenly, Shu called out to her in a serious tone and explained that there might be a need to escape. Its size had decreased, and there were fewer tentacles than before. The plan was for him to distract the slime while Tomiko looked for the switch to the door. He told her not to take a risk and to return to the front if necessary. Tomiko stayed silent for a moment before agreeing, accepting that if Shu thought that, then it was okay. It was best for them to reach the surface and squeak in their best condition. Shu paused briefly before telling her that their current foundation was not strong, so they should not let their guard down just because they had gained a little strength. If they did something unreasonable, failure would mean death. Tomiko had gotten angry at him about that before. Hearing that, Tomiko quickly turned toward him. Shu apologized and admitted that he thought he would not be able to help himself again. He wondered whether its sporangium would hold an amazing ability once they ate it. He added that, thanks to this king slime, there were a lot more slimes on the 50th floor. If they did nothing, the oasis might get invaded one day. Unio-san and the oasis helped them out a lot, so it would not hurt to return the favor. Tears began welling in Tomiko's eyes as Shu poured water over himself and declared that, with that said, he would show her something manly. He wanted to make sure she did not miss the moment they took revenge for her mother. Tomiko slapped his face and shouted at him to just go already. Immediately afterward, Shu rushed back into the boss chamber, declaring that it was time for round 3. Shu approached the slime, but he noticed that there was no reaction even when he came this close. It was not sending any tentacles his way either. He wondered if it could be dead. All of a sudden, however, its body wobbled, and in the next moment, something swirled from within it. Shu was stunned as he watched the threads slowly form into spikes, immediately recognizing it as a fungal ability. One of the spikes lunged at him, but Shu dodged it. He quickly activated his abilities and counterattacked by swinging his sword, but his blade was unable to cut through the tentacle. Shu was shocked to realize that it had suddenly hardened. Even his luminescent spores could not cut through it. The slime launched another attack, slamming Shu with its spiked tentacle, but he managed to dodge again. He noticed that the tentacles had gained increased destructive power due to the fungal ability. However, the slime could now bring out only 3 of them. The hardening of the tentacles extended only around the middle point. If that was the case, Shu would close the gap and aim for its root. The moment he severed the tentacles, acid splashed toward him, but he quickly blocked it with his shield. Another 2 tentacles charged at him from behind. Before they could reach him, Shu leapt into the air and landed back on the ground. He alarmed himself at the danger, realizing that the slime had changed its attack pattern just now. However, he now understood how it attacked. It was just as Tomiko had said, and he would stake everything on his footwork. Meanwhile, Tomiko hugged her tail tightly as she watched the battle anxiously. She immediately steeled herself, certain that everything would be fine. Silently, she cheered Shu on and urged him to do his best. After cutting off all the tentacles, Shu smirked as he finally saw the nucleus inside the slime's body. He determined that one more strike would be enough if he pierced it with his fungal filament arm. His thoughts immediately faded when the slime suddenly disappeared from its spot and appeared right above him. Shu was momentarily stunned. The slime morphed into spikes and immediately crashed into him. Shu barely managed to dodge it. He reacted in disbelief as he realized that the actual body itself was now coming at him. The slime suddenly squirmed and then shot a spike at Shu. He quickly dodged it, causing the spike to crash into the wall instead. Shu noted internally that it definitely possessed destructive power, but it was shaving away its own body fluid to attack. And if it continued to do that? Suddenly, at that moment, one of the slime's attacks struck Shu's arm, melting it instantly. However, his arm regenerated in no time. Shu panted heavily as the slime's body shrank back to its original size. Deep inside, Shu wondered what this was. It was not as though he was not afraid, as he was still in the middle of an extremely dangerous situation. Yet, the feeling of barely managing to stay alive was a little fun. He would no longer be returning to a simple salaryman. Shu noted that the slime had become much smaller and that its movements had grown dull. He then urged the slime to come at him. Immediately, the slime transformed into a massive spike and charged straight toward him. Shu slid beneath it and drove his sword into its body, dragging the blade along as he moved and slicing the slime in half. The creature's fluids splashed everywhere as its body split apart, exposing the nucleus hidden within. Shu slowly approached it, ignoring the acid beneath his feet as he walked toward the exposed core. He quietly apologized before ending its life completely. The moment he sliced through the nucleus, the remaining fluids spilled out everywhere. Shu's body wavered slightly as he realized that he had won. Meanwhile, Tomiko approached the slime's corpse, glared at it, and stomped on it, believing that it deserved what had happened. Even so, she held no hard feelings toward it. When Shu called out to her, Tomiko immediately jumped into his arms while crying. She thanked him and expressed all of her gratitude through her squeak. Through her tears, she conveyed how glad she was that he was okay. Shu smiled gently as he accepted her feelings, though inwardly he wished she would stop drilling into his nipples. He then urged Tomiko to leave with him so they could go and see the sun above. At that moment, however, a quiet voice suddenly told them to stop. The parasite reflected that, together with its hosts up to that point, it had battled this man many times. Every time it saw him, he became stronger and more beautiful. However, its host this time had been very powerful. The parasite was convinced that victory against it had not been possible, but one question remained: how had that man done it? Even after its link with the slime had been cut, it could still clearly picture the light Shu had created. The parasite wanted to meet him again, so it decided to go after him. In its current state, the parasite could interfere with the consciousness of small hosts. No matter how many times it had to experience death, it would absolutely reach Shu. Moments later, they finally found the switch, which was embedded somewhere very hidden. Tomiko immediately pushed the button, and in an instant, a rumbling sound echoed as the entrance finally opened. Shu noted in his thoughts that it was as expected of a boss sporangium. Their levels had gone up, and they had also gained new abilities. Tomiko's level increased to 41, giving her a total of 6 fungal abilities, while Shu's level increased to 66, giving him 17 fungal abilities. Now that they had overcome the biggest obstacle, there was nothing stopping them from going to the surface. Shu stepped forward excitedly, eager to head all the way to the surface with Tomiko. However, he soon realized that it was not that simple. They sprinted through the narrow path, only to encounter more slimes, leaving Shu sick of dealing with them already. Later on, they reached the 41st floor. A beast charged at them, but they countered its attack and killed it immediately. As they ate its sporangium, Shu remarked that the beast had been fairly strong as well. Tomiko revealed that it had been around level 40. Shu wondered if they could sell its fur and whether they should collect anything that looked valuable to sell on the surface. Still, he realized that if they had to deal with the small fry as well, he would eventually run out of stamina. With that, he decided to scatter repellent spores by activating his 13th fungal ability. Shu then wondered whether the spores worked on Tomiko, but Tomiko scolded him for comparing her to beasts. Afterward, they continued along their path. Shu noticed that the higher they ascended, the less space there seemed to be on each floor. As their speed continued to increase, 12 days passed since their battle to the death with the boss. When they reached the 20th floor, they walked along the path while Shu realized that his tension was fading. Tomiko pointed out that it was because his goal had been achieved. Shu agreed and noted that it was especially important to be careful at times like this, or they would end up making a stupid mistake and die a foolish death. Tomiko remarked that he had improved. Shu proudly acknowledged that, naturally, it was him after all. When Tomiko did not agree with him, Shu turned toward her and urged her to say something, then admitted that his remark had been his fault. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed nearby. Tomiko notified Shu that a fight was taking place over there. Shu remarked that whoever was fighting Shu was going at it without a care, then suggested checking it out with her. Tomiko immediately refused and urged him to wait, having realized that one of the combatants was somehow a human. She confirmed that she could hear a human voice. Shu reacted in shock upon hearing this. Tomiko urgently added that the humans were likely being chased by a beast. Shu nervously realized that it was bad and that his tension was rising again. Tomiko glared at him and ordered him to hurry and help the person already, calling him a fool. Hearing that, Shu immediately rushed toward the scene. Nearby, a man was panting heavily while facing a terrifying beast. Just then, Shu arrived and checked whether he was alright, but the man quickly warned him not to come any closer because it was a fully matured one. Tomiko informed Shu that the large beast was around level 40 while the human was about level 20. If Shu did not save them now, it was only a matter of time. However, Shu hesitated, wondering whether it was really okay for him to help. He worried that they might get angry at him for stealing their prey, as there might be something like a hunter's manners involved. Nevertheless, he steeled himself and asked the man if he needed help. The man once again warned him that it was dangerous out here and urged Shu to escape, but before he could finish, the beast released a poison breath that caused the man to vomit. Shu immediately recognized it as poison. While the man was weakened, the beast charged toward him. Without wasting a second, Shu called out to Tomiko and slammed himself into the beast, stopping it in its tracks. He entrusted the man to Tomiko and she quickly obeyed. Shu then faced the beast, noting that despite the level difference, it seemed like a handful. Despite its large frame, he could not see any openings in its movements. In that case, he would have to use something whose length he could change. Shu immediately summoned his fungal hammer. The instant the beast charged at him, he blocked its attack with his shield, and was shocked by how heavy it was, wondering whether the beast was some kind of cannonball. He immediately activated another ability to increase the hammer's attack power. Raising the weapon, Shu quietly expressed that he had no hard feelings before smashing the beast's head with overwhelming force. The creature's body crashed lifelessly onto the ground. Shu released a heavy sigh before turning toward Tomiko and checking how things were going on her side. Tomiko reported that the man seemed to be conscious but was unable to move, leaving them to determine what they should do. Immediately, Shu searched for herbs that could neutralize the poison in their stock. Suddenly, Tomiko suggested using that ability instead, as it might work. Shu immediately activated his 11th fungal ability, the green ball. It was a fungal filament ball containing a substance similar to that of the recovery ball. During an experiment, they had discovered that a rat poisoned after eating a mushroom recovered after drinking the ball's liquid. With a chance of success, Shu decided that they should try it. Shu lifted the man's goggles, and the moment he saw his face, he was stunned. Inwardly, he could not help but think that the boy was pretty. Although it had not been intentional, he had thought the boy was cute. He was supposed to be into girls, so he wondered what was wrong with him. Seeing Shu flustered, Tomiko noticed something was wrong, but Shu immediately snapped out of it and reminded himself that this was not the time to be flustered and that he needed to hurry. At the same time, he felt that having someone else drink their only liquid was somewhat immoral. Nevertheless, Shu squeezed the ball and made the boy drink it. Just then, the boy woke up. He immediately sat up and was surprised to see Shu, who advised him to stay still for a bit. At that moment, the boy's body staggered, prompting Shu to advise him to rest a little longer. The boy then wondered whether Shu had been the one to neutralize the poison. Shu revealed his 11th fungal ability to him and indicated that it was what he had meant. Without hesitation, the boy immediately consumed the fungal ball. Shu was shocked that he had eaten it just like that, but the boy simply swallowed it before bowing deeply in gratitude for being saved. Shu froze for a moment. It had been 5 years since he had woken up in this metro, and having a normal conversation with another person felt almost unreal. Overwhelmed, Shu teared up and quickly turned away, apologizing as he asked the boy to wait for a moment. Tomiko pointed out that he was crying, and Shu bluntly told her that she did not have to point it out. After things settled, the boy introduced himself as Ikari Noa, a hunter from the Ikebukuro tribe. Shu introduced himself as well, followed by Tomiko doing the same. Ikari then looked at Tomiko and identified her species as a species of Nakano carbuncle. Tomiko was surprised and wondered whether he had met her species before. Ikari answered that he had not and admitted that this was his first meeting with one, though he had heard stories from his great-grandfather. Meanwhile, Shu was dumbfounded by how little surprise Ikari showed. He wondered whether talking animals were actually common. More importantly, he wondered what Ikebukuro and Nakano were, as well as what Ikari meant by tribe. Ikari remarked that Shu was amazing for being able to solo a fully grown Catablipas. He admitted that doing so was impossible for him because he could not find an opening to run away, and Shu had really saved him there. Hearing that, Shu sighed in relief, glad that Ikari was not angry about him stealing Ikari's prey. Ikari then wanted to talk about all sorts of things, but he suggested doing so while dismantling the beast. He pointed ahead and indicated that there was running water in that direction, suggesting that they head there. However, Ikari struggled to drag the massive body. Shu noticed its weight and decided to help, causing Ikari's expression to brighten as he thanked him. Meanwhile, Shu was stunned when he noticed Ikari's chest, leaving Ikari puzzled by his reaction. When she followed his gaze and realized that he had been looking at her chest, she quickly covered herself in embarrassment. Shu then realized that Ikari was a girl after all. Ikari apologized and tried to explain that she had not been intentionally hiding it. Shu, who was also flustered, decided to pull the beast from the front instead and asked her to push from the back. From his shoulder, Tomiko pointed out that she was a female as well. Shu simply acknowledged it. Deep inside, Shu could somewhat understand why Ikari might be hiding her gender. She was a hunter, so there was no doubt that the world was more dangerous than before. Soon after, they arrived at their destination. Ikari summoned a knife and asked them to wait before beginning to dismantle the beast. She cut into its flesh and reached inside to retrieve the sporangium. She then handed it to them and explained that since the two of them had taken it down, they were free to eat it. Shu decided to share this one with Tomiko and let Ikari eat the other one. Ikari was surprised that it was really okay, then thanked them. Immediately, Ikari ate the sporangium. Shu quickly looked away, reminding himself that he really could not look or he would be arrested. More accurately, the moment he looked at her with such eyes, it would be all over for him. As soon as Ikari finished the sporangium, energy surged through her. Shu flinched and quickly checked what was wrong. Ikari revealed that she had leveled up. Shu congratulated her. Ikari added that she had finally reached level 24 and thanked them once again. Meanwhile, Tomiko smugly revealed that she was at level 41. Ikari reacted in shock, amazed that Tomiko was over level 40. She then turned to Abe Shu and asked about his level. Shu casually replied that he was probably 66, as far as he knew. Ikari completely froze. She noted that being over level 60 was supposedly the level of a master. She repeated the unfamiliar term in confusion, wondering about a master, before deciding that it was probably so. Shu then asked whether, besides the sporangium, they also took the skin and meat. Ikari confirmed that they did. She explained that Catablipa's hide could be used to make clothes for hunters, while the fatty meat was rich in flavor, so they would salt it and make bacon outside. Shu reacted with excitement at the mention of bacon. He then remembered that the creature had breathed poison earlier and wondered whether the meat was safe to eat. Ikari reassured him that it was safe. They would not touch the viscera, and a beast this large had plenty of meat to go around. Hearing that, Shu eagerly decided to help and summoned his sword, ready to cut whatever Ikari instructed him to cut. Ikari was surprised that he also used a battle sword in addition to a hammer, large shield, and antidote. She wondered whether his fungal job was something like a holy knight before introducing herself as an artisan. She repeated the unfamiliar terms in confusion, wondering about fungal job and holy knight. Ikari quickly apologized and tried to explain that she was only asking him questions, but she struggled to find the right way to put it. In Shu's mind, he noted that there were far more technical terms than he had expected, making it difficult for him to understand what she was saying. Shu wanted to use this opportunity to tell her about his situation and learn more about everything, but he did not know how she would react. She was the first human he had met here, and she seemed like a good kid. If she thought of him as a bad guy and closed her heart to him, he would probably cry. Still, it was not as though he could avoid telling her. He was her savior, at the very least, so he hoped that would prevent such a reaction. Shu then called out to Ikari and warned her that what he was about to tell her might sound strange, hoping that she would not be offended by it. He revealed that he was probably a person from 100 or so years ago. He came from the old world, where dungeons and hunters did not exist. With that, he began explaining everything from the moment he had awakened. Moments later, Ikari let out a heavy sigh and revealed that she did not believe him. She understood that such a reaction was inevitable. She explained that ever since the Satan slime had been identified 15 years ago, nobody had been able to take it down, yet Shu was claiming that he had defeated it. Shu struggled to find the right words to explain. Just then, Tomiko confirmed that it was true that they had won and that Shu had taken revenge for her mother and her partner. Ikari then asked Shu to let her confirm one thing. She gently held his wrist and pressed her thumb against it, leaving him confused. Suddenly, she sliced his palm, causing a wound and making Shu gasp in pain as he demanded an explanation. Internally, he wondered whether she really was a bad kid after all. Ikari asked him to let her clearly observe how his wound would heal. As she watched closely, the injury began closing on its own. Ikari reacted in shock upon seeing the bluish-black fungal filament and realizing that it was healing much faster than ordinary self-healing. She concluded that it was an immortal fungal ability. Ikari then looked at Shu and questioned whether it was true that he really was someone from the old world, a hero's vessel, the 13th thread reeler. Shu echoed in confusion at the term thread reeler, while Ikari hesitated, wondering where she should begin her explanation. She then suggested continuing the conversation after they stepped outside, since it was a really long story and would be difficult to explain properly there. Shu replied that he understood. Ikari apologized to him once again, and Shu quickly reassured her that it was okay and that they still had things to do. In his mind, he was glad that she believed him, though he wondered whether it was really that amazing. Ikari pointed out that it was already a little late to start heading outside that day and suggested that they have a boar hot pot that night. Shu reacted with excitement, while Tomiko wondered what a boar hot pot was. Shu explained that it was a hot pot made with boar meat, the king of game meat. Tomiko asked whether it was tasty, and Shu admitted that he had never had any. Ikari giggled and revealed that, if she was being honest, that was precisely why she had come there. She had tried some in Naruma before, and the taste was quite unforgettable. However, the result had been that she almost got eaten herself. Shu remarked that it had been a lot bigger than a normal catapleba's. Moments later, Ikari instructed Shu on how to slice the beast's meat. After separating the parts, he washed them in the river. Tomiko took a small bite of the raw meat and found it juicier than wolf meat. Ikari instructed that after adding salt, she would tie it up with herbs and hand it to them. She then asked Shu to put it in the bag, and he obeyed right away. Curious, Shu wondered about the mushroom she was adding together with the meat. Ikari explained that it was beefsteak mushroom and that it would absorb the water from the meat. After that, Ikari pointed somewhere and indicated that there was a sort of safe room on the 13th floor where the beast could not enter. Once they reached that place, they would be able to rest easy for the day. Shu mentioned that he would use the beast repellent again. As they walked through the narrow path, Shu could see some beasts roaming around and was amazed by how the beasts on this floor looked as if they were little puppies. Ikari noted that if they were compared to the beast from floor 50, it made sense. Tomiko smugly declared that they were no match for her, and Shu agreed. After walking for a while, Ikari pointed to a small crack and indicated that it was right there. As they passed through it, Ikari ignited her lamp. Shu observed that it was pretty dark there, and Ikari explained that there was no firefly moss. She then put down her bag and stretched out her arms, causing Shu's face to flush. He secretly noted that the moment she took off her mantle, it became very clear that she was a female. Now that he took a good look, they were big. Ikari glanced at him, noticing his reaction. Shu quickly denied anything was wrong and explained that he had only been wondering whether all hunter clothes were like that. Ikari informed him that it was an orthodox jersey, but it was cheap and had good resistance to stabbing as well as dirt, which had made it a favorite among hunters. Shu realized that it was called a jersey after all. Ikari then asked both Tomiko and Shu to fetch some water. She instructed them that once they exited, they had to turn right and should reach a water source. Following her directions, they reached the place. Shu could not help but feel that it was like they were back at that place, and Tomiko agreed. Shu wondered whether Yunio-san was doing all right and hoped that was the case. While filling the bottle with water, Tomiko suddenly questioned whether the human, Ikari Noa, was a trustworthy person. Shu answered that he thought she was a good kid, though it seemed like she was finding it hard to say something. Hearing that, Tomiko decided to believe him. Shu grinned, finding it kind of her to say that for a squirrel like her. Before long, they returned, and Ikari welcomed them before beginning to cook. First, once the water started to boil, she dissolved the miso. Second, she added the seasoning, salt, and herbs. Third, she added the vegetables, mushrooms, and meat. The aroma alone made Shu and Tomiko look very hungry. Later, the dish was ready and Ikari gave them their share. Both Tomiko and Shu quickly expressed their gratitude before taking their spoons and eating. Upon tasting it, their bodies froze momentarily, then they quickly ate with tears in their eyes. Shu was overwhelmed by how good it was, to the point that his body would not stop eating. Tomiko exclaimed that her tongue was in delish heaven, that she could not take it, and that this was a squeak unlike any other. Hearing that, Ikari smiled before tasting her own cooking. She found it so good, especially because they had obtained the meat themselves. Moments like this made her appreciate being a hunter. Ikari urged them to eat more since there was still plenty, adding that next time she would use lighter seasoning for Tomiko-san. Hearing this, Tomiko praised her as the best. She pointed out that Tomiko had been baited far too quickly, though he was no different. Moments later, Ikari boiled some water and offered Shu coffee. Shu was surprised that they had coffee and eagerly accepted some. As Ikari handed it to him, she briefly explained that it was grown in Narima and was a mushroom coffee. Coffee mushrooms were grown there, then roasted and crushed into a fine powder that could be used to make a drink. When Shu tasted it, he silently found it bitter, but there was no mistaking that it was coffee. Tomiko excitedly asked for some as well, but when she tasted it, her face crumpled from the bitterness. Suddenly, Ikari brought up Shu's lack of knowledge regarding this world, including his own body, and revealed that she might be able to help him learn more about it. She knew more about the previous era than other people did. Shu reacted with surprise. Ikari urged them to leave early the following morning so they could reach the outside while there was still daylight. First of all, she thought it would be best for him to confirm everything with his own eyes. Although anxious, Shu understood. He then expressed his gratitude for how much she had helped him by teaching him about all sorts of things. Ikari smiled, feeling that she could say the same, since the two of them were her saviors. Shu shifted the topic and asked how old she was. Ikari answered that she was 18 years old. Hearing this, Shu wondered whether she was basically a JK and tried to remember what he had been doing at her age. Noticing his silence, Ikari tried to get his attention. Shu mentioned that if he did not count the time he had been asleep, he should be 28 that year, at least as far as he could tell. Ikari stared intently at his face while muttering his age, then remarked that he looked a little younger than that after all. Tomiko suddenly interrupted by informing Ikari that she was 10 years old. Shu pointed out that she had wet the bed the other day. Without warning, Tomiko struck his face, causing blood to burst from his nose. Later, as the night deepened, Ikari asked whether it was okay to put out the fire. Shu agreed. Ikari then sought Tomiko's opinion, but Shu noted that she had already jumped the gun and was sleeping. With that, Ikari turned off the fire and wished them good night. Shu did the same before they went to sleep. Meanwhile, Tomiko was already sleeping peacefully and dreaming about her mom. A few years ago, on the 50th floor, a squirrel panted heavily as she stared at the baby she had just given birth to. At that moment, she thought about Katsuo and reflected that the life he had given her had allowed her to meet this girl. She whispered to her child that a special ability or a mission of some sort did not matter to her, because she would be the one to protect her child. A few years passed, and her child grew. The squirrel observed that her daughter was starting to resemble her a lot, while the pattern of her fur was definitely her father's. Her daughter's eyes were possibly hers. The squirrel realized that she would need to think of a name for her child soon. At the same time, she thought about her husband waiting back at home, Tarochi, and her lovely mother, Meikyuu. She then decided that from that moment on, her daughter's name would be Tomiko. Later, as they usually did, the mother pointed at an insect and asked what it was. Tomiko cheerfully identified it as koroni. Her mother pointed to another, and Tomiko immediately identified it as tankuri. Her mother praised her for correcting them all before suggesting that they go a bit further that day. Tomiko cheerfully agreed. Meanwhile, the mother reflected that one had to learn, possess knowledge, and gain power to survive in this underground world. how to catch insects, how to choose mushrooms, and how to distinguish animals and vegetation. There was also the rampant danger in the metro beasts, as well as the various traps in this complex labyrinth. One needed the know-how to anticipate all of that and evade it. While they were resting, Tomiko asked her mother to tell her about the surface again that day. Her mother began telling her about it, knowing that they should have the know-how about the world outside. She realized that her daughter, Tomiko, was a really quick learner and might even be more capable than her. However, intelligence was not the only trait that had been passed on. All the words she usually blurted out at her prey had been taken imperfectly. Tomiko had seen her mother do that, making her just like her mother had been back in the day. The mother then told Tomiko that from then on, she must end her sentences with a squeak. Tomiko echoed the instruction in confusion. Her mother explained that it was a magical charm that would bring her happiness. Internally, she noted that the carbuncle species and the humans of this country, named thread reelers, had a friendly arrangement. With just them alone, it would be impossible to get past the boss on the 49th floor. For now, they could only hope that hunters would come and deal with it. If things continued like this, when Tomiko eventually met a hunter, she might be treated as an emergency ration. The mother decided that Tomiko needed to become a valuable asset when that time eventually came. She then informed Tomiko that, just as she had met her dad and her partner, the spell was meant to help her when Tomiko's happy encounter came. She encouraged Tomiko to do it, and Tomiko immediately squeaked that she could. Hearing that, her mother hugged her and praised her for being smart. Tomiko exclaimed that she loved having her belly rubbed. Seeing this, her mother could not help but think that Tomiko was just like her father. The carbuncle species, like Tomiko and her mother, were not suited for battle. Hunting was done with extreme care and precision, and any sporangium obtained was shared. Tomiko did not receive any major injuries and continued to grow, waiting every day for a meeting with a hunter. One day, the mother coughed heavily, and Tomiko worriedly asked whether she was okay. The mother reassured Tomiko that she was fine and that it was only a light cold. She apologized for making Tomiko worry. Deep inside, however, she knew that the medicinal herbs were no longer helping and that she was getting worse by the day. She did not have much time left. A few years passed, and Tomiko turned 4 years old. The mother greeted her with a happy birthday. Tomiko stared excitedly at the food in front of her and wondered whether it was all for her. Her mother confirmed that it was, as it was her celebration. While eating, the mother remarked that Tomiko had really gotten big. She had also become very dependable, capable of dealing with the area around them even when she was alone. Her mother added that her fungal abilities were still low and that she was still at level 10, but Tomiko could support her when they hunted. The mother called Tomiko's attention once again and told her that they should aim to reach the surface. Lately, it felt as though the beasts there had become restless, making it dangerous to remain in that place. Deep down, the mother admitted that she really wanted to let Tomiko grow up some more, but once she died, Tomiko would be all alone down there. If they could get past the boss room, Tomiko would be able to go outside even if she was alone. The mother also told her child that she wanted to see Tomiko's dad again. He was very kind, and she wanted Tomiko to meet him as well. However, at the mention of the 49th boss, Tomiko hesitated. Seeing this, the mother remembered that they had talked about it before, including Katsuo and how frightening it was. Tomiko expressed her desire to stay there with her mother. The mother called Tomiko's attention and reminded her that they had talked a lot about the outside world, about the sky being very high, abundant forests, and large human cities. Tomiko's father was also waiting for them at their hometown. Sooner or later, they would have to take on that challenge, and they would leave the place alive. The mother was certain that if they both tried together, they could sneak past that slime. Tomiko began to tremble, her voice shaking as she thought about the sun, how bright and pretty it was, and how much she wanted to squeak at the sun together with her mommy. Hearing this, the mother held Tomiko's hand and made it a promise that they would go look at the sun together. After that, they climbed the stairs, with the menacing aura growing stronger as they got closer. The mother reflected that during those 4 years, she had often come to check on it. The slime had grown even bigger, and even a master class rank hunter would probably lose against it. Meanwhile, Tomiko began trembling in fear. The mother quickly hugged her and reassured her that everything was okay because she was with her. The mother noted in her thoughts that their plan was to search for the switch for the trapdoor somewhere behind the boss slime. From experience, she knew that it should be possible to open it from the inside. If it was there, it should be on a wall near the slime. However, they needed someone to play the role of decoy and distract the boss. They would wait there until something showed up that could buy them some time. Just then, a loud roar echoed nearby. The mother quickly followed where it came from and realized that the roar was coming from the orthros. It had come from the door's side. It was fast and had good dodging skills, making it the perfect decoy. They would not get another chance like this. Without wasting a moment, the mother urged Tomiko to go in. However, Tomiko continued to shiver, and her body would not move. The mother stopped and glanced at her before hugging Tomiko and reassuring her that everything would be okay and that, no matter what happened, she would protect her. Tomiko responded with a squeak. As they charged in, the mother announced their departure and led the way. As they charged in, the beast was immediately caught by the boss slime. The mother urgently told Tomiko that they had to search for the switch around there, and Tomiko squeaked in response. While searching, the mother reflected that it was likely hidden so they could not find it at a glance, and that she needed to stay calm because the Orthros was still there. But her thoughts immediately faded the moment she glanced at the beast, which had now been crushed by the slime, its body slowly melting from the acid. She could not believe it had happened so quickly. At that moment, the slime's tentacle swung toward them, and the mother quickly pulled Tomiko along as they evaded it. Once they had successfully distanced themselves, the mother checked whether Tomiko was okay and whether she had suffered any injuries. Tomiko had not, but worry filled her the moment she saw that her mother's tail was slightly burnt. The mother reassured her that an injury of this extent was nothing. She then told Tomiko to run toward the stairs and go back, assuring her that she would be right behind her. Tomiko hesitated, but the mother shouted at her to go immediately. Right away, Tomiko sprinted toward the exit. Meanwhile, the mother, who had been left behind, thought that she needed to attract the slime's attention until Tomiko reached the stairs. Immediately, she scattered the mock charm, a scatter light reflecting fungal filament fragments. Then she activated her ability, Decoy. Once it came into contact with air, it emitted a sound similar to an animal's scream. However, the slime destroyed it in an instant. While evading its attacks, the mother realized that her plan was working and that she could buy some time with it. Without wasting a moment, she activated another decoy and then scattered the mock charm. When Tomiko finally reached the exit, she quickly called out to her mother. Seeing that, the mother was glad that Tomiko had made it. She then urged Tomiko to go down the stairs ahead of her, assuring her that she would be there soon. But the moment she sprinted forward, she suddenly coughed, causing her body to collapse onto the ground. When she managed to stand again, it was already too late. The slime's tentacle smashed into her body, sending her tumbling across the ground until she crashed into the wall. Heavily wounded, the mother realized that she had been unable to dodge it and that she needed to get back quickly. She forced herself to rise, but her body would not move. She watched Tomiko cry as she called out to her mother. The mother silently apologized to Tomiko for leaving her alone in a place like this. It was because Tomiko had been there that she had been able to make it this far. She had wanted to show her much more of this world, and she wished for the child to find happiness from that point onward. At her final moments, the mother reached out her hand toward Tomiko, expressing her love for her. After that, Tomiko returned to the 50th floor, crying non-stop as she repeatedly called out to her mom. Days passed after the incident. Tomiko lay on their bed, thinking about her mom and how much she wanted to go with her. Her mom had promised that they would look at the sun together. Tomiko reflected that she still did not have any abilities and could not even leave this place, much less level up. She had to search for a sporangium that she could obtain. It was extremely rare to find a dead body with an intact sporangium or a metro beast on the verge of death, because beasts that preyed on others did so for the sake of eating the sporangium. For those who could not hunt alone, however, that was the only option remaining. As Tomiko searched through a beast's corpse, she realized that there was no sporangium there either and wondered where else she could look. Just then, she heard a small noise echoing nearby. When she glanced toward it, she found a pup and a dead wolf. The pup's cries continued to echo. Tomiko hesitantly approached the pup, apologizing before lifting its body and biting off its neck. Tomiko continued searching wholeheartedly, and after half a year of scraping by through sheer luck, she finally leveled up and gained a new fungal ability, enhanced hearing. She was amazed by her ability to hear all sorts of sounds and realized that this was what an ability felt like. She wished that she could show it to mommy as well. Then, 1 whole year had passed since her separation from her mother. One day, Tomiko suddenly heard a noise. She had never heard that type of sound before. It was not a cry, but it was similar to the sounds made by her and her mom. When she finally arrived, she saw a naked man and a dead wolf lying on the ground. Tomiko secretly observed from nearby, realizing that the creature was a beast she had never seen before. She wondered if it had defeated the ghost wolf. She then noticed that the creature's head was injured, its skin had a squeaky softness, and it had long, thin legs. It could not be. Was this the thread reelers that mom had talked about? A hunter? But it was strange that it was not wearing clothes to substitute for fur. A sporangium lay right in front of the creature, but it was not eating it and did not seem to have any stamina left. Tomiko wondered if it was really a hunter. If it did not hurry, the blood would attract the other beasts. Tomiko hugged her tail tightly, desperately questioning what she should do. Just then, she felt her mom's hand comforting her. At that moment, she remembered her mom telling her that it was a spell to bring her good luck, just as she had met her dad and her partner. One day, Tomiko would have a happy meeting of her own. Recalling those words, Tomiko's resolve became firm. She could do it. It was a charm her mom had taught her, and she would show her that she could do it. Slowly, Tomiko stepped out from hiding. Then she sprinted toward the creature, asking whether it was not going to eat the sporangium. Back in the present, Shu noticed the rails running up the walls and the right turn that would have been impossible to make. A cave that had not been there yesterday was also among the things he had tried not to think about until he escaped, but now they were all he could think about. Anxiously, he wondered whether he would finally get an answer today. When Shu entered their temporary hideout again, Ikari greeted him with a good morning. Ikari rubbed her eyes and announced that she would make something light for breakfast, so they should start preparing to leave. Shu thanked her. He then tickled Tomiko's belly in an attempt to wake her. Tomiko blushed, called him a beast, and accused him of trying to assault a maiden while she was asleep. She slowly drifted back to sleep, and Shu tried to stop her from going back to sleep. Later, Ikari finished preparing breakfast. Shu sighed in relief, remarking that this finally felt like breakfast and confirming that yesterday's stew had not been a dream after all. Ikari informed them that they should depart once they finished eating, since if they left now, the sun would still be up by the time they were outside. Meanwhile, Tomiko hesitated before drinking and wondered whether it was the bitter stuff from the previous night. Ikari explained that it was green tea today, and that she thought Tomiko-san would be able to drink it. Hearing that, Tomiko excitedly ran around Ikari, giving her 100 points to Ikari Noa. Ikari thanked her. After that, they resumed their journey toward the surface. She remarked that, come to think of it, he had not really seen any other hunters besides them there. Ikari explained that Otsuka Metro did not provide any notable resources and was rather far from a town, making it an unpopular spot for hunters. In the past, there had been brave people who challenged the Satan slime, but everyone had lost that challenge. She further explained that she had heard even a super party of over level 50, consisting of famous master class people, had been unable to defeat the slime. This had further discouraged people from coming there, so hearing that Shu had defeated the monster alone had been quite a surprise. Tomiko quickly corrected her by pointing out that there were two of them. Ikari acknowledged that she was right and quickly apologized. Shu then wondered whether having several people over level 50 should increase their odds of winning. Ikari explained that there was also the matter of whether their abilities suited the need. Shu understood. Just then, two wolves charged at them. Shu killed them in an instant, leaving Ikari amazed. After extracting the sporangium, Ikari exclaimed over its vicious, dense, and bitter flavor, unable to get enough of the bloody smell of the sporangium. Shu was dumbfounded by the commentary, which made it look as though she were eating something tasty. After a short rest, they continued onward. Their path shifted from grassy ground to a river, then into a cave, where they crawled through a narrow passage. Nervously, Tomiko asked Shu which floor they were on now, wondering whether they had just passed the 12th, the 11th, or the 10th. Seeing her anxiety, Ikari laughed and informed her that they were on the 9th floor. Shu's heart began to race nervously. They were finally on a single-digit floor, and his tension was going through the roof. Tomiko bit his tail and shakily reassured him that everything would be okay because she was there. Shu pointed out that she was eating his tail. Afterward, they reached the 2nd floor. Shu noticed that the air felt different there. The mold smell was very thin, and they were getting closer now. Finally, they arrived on the 1st floor. Shu's eyes fixed on the exit. Tomiko leapt to the ground, determined to walk on her own feet as well, and decided that they would leave this place together. Shu smiled at her and agreed that they would go to the Promised Land. When they finally stepped out of the dungeon, they were greeted by a bright light. Tomiko found it extremely bright and realized that the sun was above them. She quickly covered her eyes from the brightness. Ikari warned her that she could not stare at it because her eyes were not used to it after being underground for so long. Tomiko marveled at how pretty it was. The ceiling was so high and its blue color revealed that this was the sky outside, the world itself. Tomiko began to cry as she whispered that she had done it and that she had exited the metro, thinking of mommy. Meanwhile, Shu stood frozen, his eyes filled with shock. He recalled Tomiko's mother saying that the outside world was very beautiful, but he had never known how much of that was really true, since it could have been a ruse to keep Tomiko's spirits up. Shu knew what the world looked like and had therefore been prepared for it. A destroyed, barren landscape full of rubble after Tokyo had fallen and human civilization had collapsed. Yet what stood before him was nothing like what he had expected. In disbelief, Shu wondered whether this was really Tokyo. Staring at the towering strange plants around them, Shu could not believe that this was Tokyo. Ikari called out to him and suggested that they survey the land from there, believing they would be able to see the town as well. Tomiko excitedly agreed, wanting to see that human town. Immediately, they followed Ikari and climbed up to the cliff. But the moment they arrived, Shu was once again shocked by what he saw. Ikari explained that, in the Great Tokyo woodlands, this whole area of New Tokyo was covered in fungal plants. Shu was horrified as he struggled to comprehend how any of this could be Tokyo and how everything could have changed so much in 100 years. Ikari revealed that she had heard from her great-grandfather that Tokyo had once been a crowded city full of tall buildings, with far more people living there than there were now. Shu was confused by the mention of her great-grandfather. Ikari explained that he had been a person from the previous era, but that he had died 8 years ago. Shu understood. Ikari then took a small notebook from her pocket and explained that it was a notebook from her great-grandfather's early years, vaguely describing the happenings of their era. Shu was shocked to realize that these were notes from a person from his time. Ikari added that some areas of the notebook were too damaged to read, but fortunately, this part was written clearly. She began reading the text. It described the Tokyo judgment of 100 years ago. Inside the Tokyo metropolitan area, on a certain day, a strange event had taken place at a Tokyo metro station. A previously non-existent route had suddenly appeared. The tracks continued through a hole made in the wall, and a weak scent of fish wafted from the hole. Similar reports came one after another. Because of this, the Tokyo Metro halted operations, stating that serious defects had been found in the tunnels and tracks of each line. Teams of people were sent to investigate, but none of them returned. Teams were then sent to search for the missing people, but they did not return either. At that time, the mysterious lines continued increasing. After that, 2 disasters occurred that came to be known as the Tokyo Judgment. The first was a flood event from the metro. The extensive metro system beneath the Tokyo area suddenly underwent a massive change, causing a large earthquake to occur in the surrounding area. Then, the crumbling Tokyo was surrounded by a huge wall. Shu was confused by the mention of a wall. Ikari pointed ahead and indicated that it could be faintly seen in the distance. She explained that it was said to be part of the metro, a large wall, and that the area beyond it was New Tokyo. More precisely, the wall surrounded the central part of Old Tokyo. Shu froze as he realized that, in other words, the underground metro had overflowed explosively, causing Tokyo to collapse. The wall had emerged, and contact with the outside world had ceased. He could not believe that all of it had happened in just one day. Ikari further explained that a lot of people had fallen victim to the disaster. Even so, more than 10 million people had survived it. Everyone waited for help to arrive from the outside. However, the second disaster was the fungal pollution outbreak. An unknown fungus began spreading from inside the metro and quickly covered the walls, destroying everything in its path. Shu was confused by the mention of fungus. Ikari explained that it was an existence completely different from any other fungus, and after a while, it was named the super fungus. Paper, machines, metal, power lines, glass, plastic, buildings, homes, and all infrastructure were destroyed. Knowledge, history, society, art, communication, science, and culture were destroyed as well. Everything above ground was lost. Ikari further explained that the super fungus was infectious, and many people died because of it. Her great-grandfather, like everyone else who survived, searched for a place to stay. The place they chose to escape to was the metro. Shu was confused by the fact that the fungus had been spreading from inside the metro. Ikari confirmed that this was indeed the case. In the midst of such an infectious fungus, people gradually developed a natural resistance to it. This was how their ancestors came to be and how the thread reelers began. They created many colonies throughout the metro. They endured the 10 years it took for the pollution to dissipate on the surface and eventually returned there, by which time the surface was already filled with fungal plants. They then began restoring humanity on the surface. They hunted beasts, cultivated land, and built houses for people to stay in. It was because of them that they existed there in the present. The people who lived in the metro knew very well that it contained an abundance of resources, as well as the sporangium possessed by the metro beast. For those who wanted to occupy the metro, the power gained from sporangium was indispensable. Thus, the profession of hunters that existed in the present began. Afterward, Ikari closed the notebook. It summarized the ending and beginning that her great-grandfather had witnessed. Tomiko remained dazed, while Shu fell into despair. He understood everything that Ikari had explained, but he still wondered what existed beyond the wall. Ikari drooped and quickly apologized. She admitted that they had never been able to cross that wall. Shu was confused by what she meant. Ikari explained that she had heard that even birds could not fly over it. It was not simply a wall, and interfering with or attempting to cross it was considered one of the taboos. Shu was stunned. There was no information about the outside because they could not do anything about it. He wondered what kind of mystery trip this was. He then asked whether Ikari knew about airplanes or helicopters. Ikari knew what those were, but she had never seen either of those machines herself. The government or the metro order might know more. Shu understood and thanked her, finally grasping the situation. He then sat down on the ground, overwhelmed by despair. Tomiko worriedly called out to him. Shu silently recalled his memories from before everything had happened and realized that all of it might already be gone, even his home. Everyone fell silent while Shu quietly cried. Suddenly, something approached from a distance. It was coming toward them, and in that instant, Tomiko sensed it and quickly turned around. But in a swift motion, the creature snatched Tomiko from Shu's shoulder. Shu was momentarily stunned, unable to understand what had just happened. Tomiko's screams echoed loudly. Shu shouted her name as he realized that she had been taken by a bird. Tomiko cried out as her body was quickly carried away from them. Shu clenched his teeth, realizing that at this rate she would be fed to the chicks. He quickly handed his coat to Ikari, apologizing and leaving her to take care of it. He then activated his ability, and in an instant, 2 arms appeared on his back. Seeing this, Ikari was shocked. Without hesitation, Shu leapt into the air. He grabbed a nearby tree and swung himself from one tree to another until he got close to the bird carrying Tomiko. He only needed a little more distance. He activated another ability and was about to strike the bird, but its body was suddenly severed in half, causing its grip on Tomiko to loosen. Tomiko's body began to fall, but Shu quickly caught her just in time, and the 2 of them began falling through the trees. After they landed, Shu realized that he had not thought about the landing. He then checked whether Tomiko was okay. Tomiko screamed that she had been very scared just then. Shu wondered what had happened there, and Tomiko pointed somewhere. Shu told her that he could not look and urged her to move away from his face. Tomiko explained that she had turned that bird bastard into rust for her squeak by using her super hardening ability. Shu could not help thinking that she had become quite the fierce beast. Just then, Ikari arrived, panting heavily, having finally found them. Shu was surprised and quickly apologized to her, saying that he would come to her right away. Ikari quickly refused and reassured him that she was okay. More importantly, she wanted to know whether he could see the town from up there. Shu stared into the distance and saw that it was really there. Ikari informed him that the town he was looking at in the distance was called Sugamo, while the big tower he could see marked the territory of the Ikebukuro tribe. Shu's face lit up as he realized that Ikari-san belonged to the tribe. Ikari confirmed it and added that she was also registered at the Bukuro's branch guild. Shu landed back on the ground and asked whether they were heading to Ikebukuro. Ikari explained that she was thinking of going to Sugamo instead. Shu wondered whether Ikebukuro was closer, since it looked like a big town as well. Ikari agreed but insisted that she simply thought it would be better for them if they went to Sugamo. Hearing this, Shu could not help wondering about the reason. The distance was no more than a jump from one station to another, yet it felt like it was something that was not easy for Ikari to say. He thought he understood now. It had to be his full-body wolf appearance that was making her refuse the idea. It was probably too early to visit the Ikafukural statue for someone who had just gotten out and looked feral, while the Jizu of Sugamo welcomed everyone regardless of who they were or how they looked. It was something like that. Shu sighed, then told Ikari that he understood and expressed his gratitude for her consideration. Ikari was puzzled by his reaction but responded anyway. Nearby, Tomiko pointed toward the bird and wondered whether they were going to eat it. Ikari informed them that the bird was called a tetra black kite and that it was quite a dangerous species. She then praised Tomiko-san. Tomiko proudly responded that some level chump of a chick had no chance. Shu pointed out that she had been caught and had peed herself. Ikari interrupted, apologizing for saying it to them, but explained that the bird's meat did not taste good. Its beak, talons, and feathers, however, made good decorative pieces, so they should take those. The 2 paid no attention to her. Tomiko protested that she had not peed herself and called Shu a salt-faced virgin, threatening to squeak his hide off. Shu argued that he was not a virgin and called her a pisser squirrel, declaring that he would kill her and consider her chop. Ikari interrupted them once again, asking whether they were listening to her. She then showed them the feather and explained that the commotion earlier might have attracted bandits to their location, so she was thinking of taking a detour to avoid them. Then, all of a sudden, Ikari asked Shu if he was all right. Tomiko added that Shu had looked down earlier and wondered whether he was feeling better now. Shu smiled, apologized for making them worry, and admitted that he was not there yet, but he could not stay like this for long. He was better now, thanks to them. Inwardly, Shu told himself that they had to reach the town first. They could wade through the sea of trees in an hour's time and reach Sugamo. Ikari then urged them to move, informing them that they would be there in 3 hours if they traveled on foot. Hearing that, Shu was momentarily stunned and reacted in disbelief. Ikari offered to show him the map, though it was only a simplified version. She pointed to Ikebukuro on the map and explained that if they went south from there, they would be able to reach a highway. It was a bit of a walk from their current location, but it would be a straight path. Shu could not believe it, noting that this was very different from his memory. At that moment, Ikari suddenly remembered that her great-grandfather's notes had mentioned it as well. After the judgment had happened, the metro had continued to flow out and change. When the pollution cleared up and everyone returned to the surface, the area inside the wall was estimated to be about 100 times larger. Everything was much farther away now than it had been before. Shu burst into frustration at the thought of it being 100 times larger. Forget Tokyo, that was the Kanto region. He could not take it anymore. Afterward, they continued along their path. Shu sighed heavily, recalling that when he had looked at the area from above, it had seemed far away. Even so, he had seen quite a few familiar names there. He then wondered about the markings on the map. Ikari explained that the block dots represented tribe territories, while the white dots represented other cities or towns. During the rebuilding of civilization, the few larger settlements had joined together to become tribes. A government had been established to oversee all of those tribes, and that had become the new Tokyo country. A chief led each tribe, while other towns were either under the government's rule or independent. Slowly, Shu realized that the markings indicated the places they had just been passing through. He wondered whether they were metro dungeons. Ikari confirmed that he was correct and added that there were many more that were not on the map. Even then, a metro meeting could be created somewhere they did not know about. After all, New Tokyo was a metro country. Shu then wondered what they were, comparing them to bamboo shoot. Meanwhile, Tomiko stared at the sky, mesmerized. She quickly informed Shu that it was getting dark. Shu recognized that it was nighttime. Tomiko excitedly pointed out the small moss-like things shining in the sky. Shu explained that they were stars. Tomiko marveled at how they were shining all over the place and found them prettier than acorns. Shu remarked that she might be the first person to compare stars to acorns. Just then, Tomiko sensed someone approaching. Seeing her sudden silence, Shu checked on her. Tomiko quickly warned them that something was coming from there. Immediately, Shu charged forward and told Ikari to wait a moment. His eyes then widened as he stared ahead, wondering whether the approaching object was a car.